welcome to stay, but
Go have a margarita for us.
Yeah.
But bring a few back. Or no, with Bambi the pictures.
okay, if we're ready, we'll do roll call.
Commissioner Smith,
Here.
Commissioner Westman,
Here.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Here.
Commissioner Newman.
Here.
And Chairperson Welch.
Here. Great, we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we're going to start our 6 o'clock special meeting. I see we have a couple from across the street. You know that our regular meeting is not till 7. We do. Okay, well, you're brave souls. So we'll start off with oral communications. Any additions or deletions to our agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, time for public comments. And this portion of the public comment period are for those items that are not on our agenda tonight. So is there anyone that would like to speak about anything that's not on our agenda tonight? Well, and this agenda is really for our special meeting, not for our general meeting, but
I believe they're here to speak about the TRO, which is related to the zoning code update.
okay.
Correct?
And while you're working your way up here, I forgot to read something, so come on up and I'll read this. I always forget to do this. This meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications Cable TV Channel 8 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and is being recorded to be replayed on the following Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website at www.cityofcapitola.org. And our technician tonight is Scott Gray. And just as a reminder, if you could silence your cell phones during the meeting, and for those of you who can come up and speak, just give us your name and sign in.
Okay.
So with that, you're welcome to go ahead.
Thanks. Daniel Gomez, and we were discussing in conversation with Katie and last time we came in for a conceptual design review, the opportunity for our project over here at 419 Capitol Avenue to be included in the TRO, the Transient Rental Occupancy District, as it kind of zigzags around several of the properties up to Blue Gum. So I wanted to kind of address that and see how that, I don't know how that relates to the meeting agenda tonight, but wanted to see, because we had, during that initial conceptual review, we had, it seemed like favorable response and support that that would be something possible that could happen up to maybe Blue Gum Avenue, include those, there's like 4 or 5 houses that are kind of zigzagged around to be included in the TRO district. And the process that is involved with doing that, and the timing and whatnot, so.
Okay, I think, are we going to do an overview of that later tonight, or is that a discussion you want?
So we'll be reviewing the project later tonight. I thought it would be appropriate to see if you wanted us to bring back the TRO as part of the zoning map, to look at the boundary, if it's something you'd like to review within the zoning code update. It does, here it is on the map. You can see
Okay.
there's a couple properties,
409, 411.
409 and 411, which are to the top left of the map, that along Capitola Avenue that are part of the TRO. But otherwise, between the Trestle and Blue Gum, there are no other properties included in the TRO. So this has come up a couple times during
I think we
our
discussed
update,
it.
but I don't think we've ever gotten clear direction on if you'd like to revise the map.
Okay,
Well,
I don't see the ones that you're saying that are on the other side of the trestle. Am I missing something? Where are the ones that,
everything.
those,
the ones that are not in, that one, you said there are a couple in the TRO?
Yeah, the pink is all TRO as well.
Okay.
So there's just 2 properties along Cap Ave that are within
Got it.
the rental.
it would seem to me that it would make some sense for you to bring it back to us and for us to talk about it. And maybe we could let the property owners along there know that we're going to be discussing this. So, we could have a genuine dialogue about it. And You know, for me personally, doing some modifications along Capitola Avenue probably makes some sense, but I think we need to do it in context with, you know, having some public input and talking about it.
So we've talked about this noticing on some items. It's one, it seems to be one of those items that we may want to notice on because it's going to have an impact to that neighborhood. And I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
we've had that discussion before. I don't know how we would.
And
Set up
it's
a special
certainly
meeting.
a hot topic right now
absolutely.
in
Yeah, it is,
neighborhoods,
right.
and I wouldn't feel comfortable doing it without having some input from, you know, the people who live around this.
But I think if staff is saying that we haven't given clear direction, I would think going forward with that, it would be nice to bring it back, but maybe do some type of noticing for the public to have input as well.
Okay, we'll schedule that up.
Does that make sense? All right?
Okay,
Great,
thank you.
thanks. Okay, anyone else that would like to address the commission under public comment? It doesn't look like it, so we'll move into commission comments. No commissioner comments? And staff comments?
Staff has no comments.
Okay, well then we'll move into item 3, our public hearings of our zoning code update.
Okay, I thought we'd start with the public notice and hearing as we begin the update to the zoning code.
How appropriate.
So, the public notice and hearing chapter, we made some minor modifications to,
Can I interrupt you and ask you a
Yes.
question? So in your little staff blurb you sent out, where we're gonna talk about the parking,
yes,
You know.
so
are we gonna do that now or later, just so?
I was thinking we'd do public notice and hearings, then we could go through the glossary and then get to parking, because I thought it would have a longer dialogue. If you'd like to reorder that, we could, because I
I
understand.
know Nils is here, so you want to let him address us first and then he could,
I-
how's that? Does
It's
he
up
want
to
to wait
you. Do you
around?
wanna come back later? You wanna do it now?
You want to stay?
Sure,
You wanna
we'll
just-
start with parking.
Okay, we'll do that and then we can.
So is the staff gonna make a presentation about some ideas and plans? Do you wanna
Yeah,
hear
what-
those first?
Yeah. So, Rich and Katie have asked me to make a brief presentation just to summarize why we're talking about this tonight. So, Chapter 1776, the parking chapter of the draft zoning code, contains parking requirements for the village, including requirements for replacing existing uses, expanding existing uses, and new structures and uses. And at the meeting on July 21st, the Planning Commission talked about village parking and requested that staff come back with some options for how to address on-site parking within the village, with the idea that the current on-site parking requirement for new uses and expanded uses may not be the most appropriate approach given the existing absence of parking within the village. So with that, we have some ideas for you to consider this evening. First, I wanted to just review what the parking regulations for the village are in the draft updated zoning code. Here is a table that shows the on-site parking requirements for the village and for other zoning districts. And within the village, for these particular uses, the on-site parking requirement is higher than in other zoning districts within the city. For retail, for restaurants, and for personal services, more on-site parking is required than other zoning districts within the city. For all other uses, the on-site parking requirement is the same. And then so the draft zoning code states what the rules are for new structures and uses with the on-site parking requirement. And what it says is that if there is a new structure or land use within the village, that it needs to provide all of the required on-site parking by that table or other uses in the other table. And if the on-site parking can't be provided, then a variance would be required. So it also says what the rule is for replacing existing uses. And what it says, I think actually based on direction that you gave at the prior meeting, that for a existing residential use that's converted to a commercial use, parking is required for the full amount of the use. For other changes in use, parking is required for the incremental intensification in the new use. In the draft, in the red line that you considered at your previous meeting, there was the language "or change to a restaurant" would require the full amount of parking for the use. The Planning Commission at that meeting directed us to remove that particular language. And then on expansions and enlargements of an existing use, what the draft zoning code says is that additional parking is required only for the expanded area. For restaurants, if the area for the restaurant use is enlarged within the existing structure footprint, there is a 20% expansion that's allowed without triggering the requirement for additional parking. So in addition to the parking regulations that are in the draft updated zoning code, the city also has an existing in lieu parking fee program. And what this program says is that for a new village hotel, an applicant may purchase from the city up to 57 spaces in the beach and village parking lot. So this in lieu program is limited only to new village hotels. In order to approve this, it's the city council that would approve it and needs to make certain findings that are shown on the screen here. So before presenting some of the ideas for options for village parking, we wanted to point out that village parking is an issue that the Coastal Commission is interested in. It's something that's addressed within the existing land use plan of the LCP. And it's possible that if the city were to change parking regulations for the village, the Coastal Commission could be concerned with that and could possibly find it to be inconsistent with the city's land use plan and require an amendment to the land use plan. So there are two policies in particular within the land use plan that are related to this issue. Policy I-1 says that the intensity of new development shall be limited to the availability of parking and other alternative transportation systems. Then there's an implementation policy that says require adequate parking for new users, such parking to be provided at sites outside the village area within walking distance or remote and served by a shuttle system. So the city has established the village and beach parking lot since the land use plan was last certified by the Coastal Commission, so that has changed since these policies were adopted, but still we thought it was important to bring up this issue of Coastal Commission and LUP consistency when you think about parking in the village. Okay, so here are some ideas that we thought we would share with you for your consideration, and there's sort of 4 topics that we've divided these into: parking ratios in the mixed-use village district, replacing existing uses, expanding existing uses, and parking for new structures. Okay, so as I pointed out in the overview of the parking regulations in the draft updated zoning code, the city currently requires more parking in the village than in other districts. And so one option that the Planning Commission has is to reconsider those parking ratios and possibly to require the same amount of on-site parking in the village as in other zoning districts, or possibly even to require less parking in the village or other zoning district, based on the idea that more people will be reaching their destination by walking and going to multiple destinations rather than just parking once for a single use. So on the issue of replacing existing uses, there are a number of possibilities. So in the current draft zoning code, the requirement is on-site parking is required for the incremental intensification of new uses, except for restaurants and residential commercial conversions. The restaurants we changed last time. An alternative approach might be to require parking for the incremental intensification of all new non-residential uses. Another option might be to allow or require an applicant to pay an in lieu fee for the incremental intensification of visitor and resident serving uses. So for example, if a retail, restaurant, or personal service, a more visitor serving use replaces an existing use, then they could pay an in lieu fee rather than provide the required onsite. Okay, so other options involving the in lieu payment of fee, the city could allow or require an in lieu payment for the full parking requirement of a new use, or could require no additional parking for a change to visitor and resident serving uses. So here's it's a sort of broad range of possibilities that we wanted to share with the Planning Commission tonight. So on the issue of the internal expansion, so within the existing building footprint, enlarging the area of an existing use. So the current draft requires parking for the expanded area with a 20% allowance for restaurant expansion. One option is to provide that 20% allowance to other uses, not just restaurants that we're expanding within the existing footprint. Another option is to require no additional parking for an internal expansion. So on the issue of an addition to an existing structure, an option that the city has is to allow or require an in lieu payment for the expanded area for visitor and resident serving uses. Another option is to allow or require in lieu payment for the sort of full parking requirement of an expanded visitor and resident serving use. So for example, if an existing use doesn't have any parking and that they expand, the city could require a payment for the full amount of the required parking, not just the intensification of the use. And then the last option that we put on the table is to require no parking for any expansion or enlargement of visitor and resident serving uses. And then this is the final slide of all of this. It's for new structures, a proposal to establish a new structure or a new use where none previously existed. So the current draft requires that the parking needs to be provided on site for a new structure. So an alternative to that would be to allow or require some or all of the parking to be provided off-site for visitor and resident serving uses. So for example, to require the new structure or the new use to rent or purchase a space from the city from the Pat Cove lot. And then the last option is to allow or require payment of in lieu fees for visitor and resident serving uses. And those fees could be put to a variety of purposes. I think the most appropriate one being for the ultimate finance and payment of a new parking structure. So that concludes sort of our presentation of ideas. I think there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of different permutations. And we wanted to lay it all out there just so that you could consider sort of the full range of possibilities that might be available to address this issue.
Okay, good. And I know Nels wants to speak on it, and then can have some commissioner comments maybe, but as Nels is coming up to give us his insight, I think maybe these ideas are some good ideas, but if the commission agrees at the end of the day, maybe we could vet this to the Traffic and Parking Commission to have some look at it before it goes much further, because obviously the city council is going to have a final say in any change, but it seems like this would be a topic that the Park and Traffic Commission may want to have some input. So,
Before Nell starts, can I ask a question? What do you mean by resident serving uses?
Yeah, so that was defined in an earlier slide. So things like restaurants, retail,
So you're not-
personal services.
Right, you're not talking about the residential uses, the residents in the village?
No, we're
Okay.
talking about the sorts of businesses that residents would
Okay.
patronize.
Anybody else want to ask questions, staff, before Nels? All right. Okay, Mr. Westman.
Thank you very much. Well, I am here tonight to ask you to step back from becoming the policy-making body for the city of Capitola regarding village parking and its inevitable acceleration of development in the village. With the greatest respect, I say that the way this is playing out is not good governance. There has been no significant public process to speak of, and to the best of my knowledge, has not involved any of the village stakeholders or advisory groups, nor has it had any expert analysis of the short-term and long-term results of the consequences of essentially lifting any parking requirements for the conversion and intensification of properties in the village. The cart in this case is getting way out in front of the horse in very much the same way as the City Hall fiasco. I have actively been involved in village parking issues for over 35 years. We have had some successes and some failures, but we have always strived for a balanced approach for all of the village stakeholders. We work to maintain a balance between the village merchants, the village residents, the parking impacts on adjacent residential neighborhoods, and accommodating the needs of our visitors. And we recognize that what makes Village special was that mix of beach, restaurants, retail, and village residents. Keeping that balance gets right to the heart of the village. This proposal will ensure that profit-driven businessmen and connected developers will turn the village into little more than an overdeveloped and underparked food court. We all know what businesses make money in the village: bars and restaurants. No other use could possibly sustain the kind of prices that we are seeing on the sale of village buildings. Over the years, the only constraint on the explosion of bars and restaurants and large modern development in the village has been the parking requirements. And if I read the staff report correctly, you are considering removing this constraint. The food court circus will surely arrive big time, and with it, even more congestion, traffic, and parking shortages. Please be realistic about parking demands. There is not a parking engineer in the country who will say that parking requirements for a bar and restaurant are the same as retail. They are significantly more. The hours of operation overlap so much that the concept of shared parking in the village is a fantasy. Then there are the village residents with 300 parking permits trying to find a place to park somewhere close to their homes. There is no surplus parking, yet the city did establish this 57 surplus parking spaces in the In Lieu program, which there is a detailed city policy on it, which I might add requires the payment of the cost to actually construct the parking space. And as we know from the parking structure, that's in the context of a parking structure, and those costs are running at about $35,000 per space. So pretty hard to sell half a space for $29.95. going to have to round up to the nearest whole space, and they're going to have to pay $35,000 plus for a space. So I don't know really how realistic an in lieu program is for anybody other than a large hotel or similar development. The Traffic and Parking Commission is talking about giving free parking to all village employees, which could be 100 cars a day. So, and in other parts of the zoning ordinance, it is proposed to convert parking spaces to parklets and to let restaurant operations spill out onto the public sidewalk. So I hope you get where I'm going with this. It's going to be a food court circus. Parking is a mess and it is getting worse. This is all unsustainable. This proposal tonight is going to make it dramatically worse with no analysis whatsoever of the repercussions of codifying this in the zoning ordinance. And where is the inevitable impact of this going to land? In the adjacent neighborhoods, which are already seriously impacted by absorbing the overflow of village parking. And I'm almost done. This would be the most significant change in parking policy in the village in decades. Eliminating parking requirements for commercial conversions is not in the general plan that I'm aware of. This is a brand new initiative coming out of the blue, and I would describe it frankly as under the radar, although I'm sure you would have a different description. My question is, what are you trying to accomplish other than making commercial property owners and bar restaurant owners more money? The traffic, congestion, the mess, and the increased parking shortages resulting from a village food court will not be pleasant for the residents and the people who love our unique and quaint village. Please don't throw gas on the fire by making the bad parking situation in the village even worse. Please back away from this destabilizing proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Nels. Anybody have a question for?
I do.
Okay. Hey, Nels, you got a question up here.
So, giving us the benefit of your 35 years and working on parking in Capitola, what is your conclusion at this point as to the future for some form of improvement to the Pacific Cove public parking area?
Improvement to Pacific Cove?
I'm not saying parking structure because I think that's too narrow a concept. There might be other or variations on the theme.
Well, I'm not sure that anything that constitutes a true improvement involves anything other than putting cars up in the air, because using almost, 6 acres to park 550 cars is just really an inefficient way to park cars. So, you know, I think inevitably that's the decision that has to be made. Are we going to have a parking structure or not, and put the cars up in the air? So,
Given the intensification that we've seen this year in the village,
yeah.
I mean, doesn't that seem like, it's the proximity of it to the village is good, and it seems to be functioning well at the level it's at now, and is it likely that an improved level, improved structure or whatever there would be beneficial?
Yeah, what I see is now that we have upper and lower lots, the thrust seems to be, well, let's give away this parking, you know. Let's let the employees park in there for free, and let's reserve 57 spaces for an in lieu program. You know, let's close some of the parking spaces in the village and put parklets in there. You know, it doesn't speak well for our kind of global parking plan of how we're going to continue coping with the demand for parking in Capitola Village. And I don't have the magic answers, but I do know that we just can't let loose the hounds as far as new development in the village is concerned. I just think, you know, once that has been let out of the box, we'll never be able to recapture it. Does that begin to address your question?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess we can bring it back and have a little further dialogue. And just to be clear, I don't think that we're trying to slide anything on the radar. I think there needs to be some new eyes on the program and something that changes, because obviously, I know, Nels, you've been working on this for decades, and it hasn't got any better since I've been here, and I don't know honestly what the solution is yet. I do know this, I believe that if we're gonna ever have a parking structure, we need to have a process to get us there. And so when this was brought up, it was brought up also with the discussion of maybe having an overlay parking district that maybe we could get some funding to get towards that direction. But doing what we're doing today doesn't seem to be working, but yet we're tying the hands of our business community, so.
I'd just like to jump in there with two things, and maybe I've been missing in action or asleep at the wheel, but I haven't heard discussions about giving away free parking to employees or establishing parklets, whatever that is. What I thought we had talked about last time was looking at kind of getting out of drilling down the way that we try and add incremental parking requirements to specific businesses for specific reasons, and take a couple steps back, look at creating a district and having those parking requirements distributed through the village a little bit more intelligently, not letting the hounds loose for development, and definitely not giving away a bunch of parking spaces. So I don't know if I'm alone, but that's what I thought we were talking about doing. And I still think it's wise because the village has gotten to where it is sort of ad hoc. And if we're ever going to have a structure, we're going to have to find a way to pay for it. But the way it's happening now, it simply limits the smaller guys from being able to develop at all, and doesn't really balance out the parking allocations that were given to specific businesses in the past. So I still think that there's some room that we can improve our current parking without letting the hounds out.
I agree. Let me just address the free parking part, because that's something the Traffic and Parking Commission is looking at, working with the businesses in the village to try to get the employees off of the streets and into the parking lots. I'm not aware of it being for free. What we were looking at is using Park Mobile, which is a system that's already there, to allow them to buy a permit, which would be at a reduced rate, but that would get them into the parking lot, we're hoping. And out of the surveys we've done, that has been something that's been positive. But to be honest with you, I don't know where it stands. We haven't had a traffic and parking meeting recently to find out the final outcome of that.
It sounds to me as though, I guess looking at the video of our last meeting, it sounded like we were, set on this and wanting to move forward all by ourselves. But what I thought we were doing was addressing something we all thought was still not working after all the hours and all the meetings and all the changes and it just seems like we were trying to find maybe something a little outside the box. And I think there are other ways to control growth of restaurants and bars, particularly bars. I don't think anybody wants to see more bars in Capitola, even associated with restaurants, because we all know that what happens even when a restaurant goes in and thinks a bar is going to be an adjunct, it ends up making them so much money that then that balance switches and their bar business becomes more. So I think we have to be very, very careful about bars in particular. But I think there are other ways to control growth of restaurants in Capitola Village rather than parking. And my goal is to try to always address when the city of Capitola is marking a particular type of business for some kind of action that other businesses don't have. Another example of it is allowing the village merchants to have sandwich boards and no one else in the community being able to. I was against that as well. So this is the same kind of thing, I think, that I think we can address further development of restaurants and hopefully, maybe even, bars especially, in other ways rather than parking, so that we don't penalize those buildings that are wanting to add a little bit something that are already there, whatever person is operating that restaurant have the opportunity to do. And I also think, you brought up multiple visits, when somebody comes to the village, I really believe that restaurants, a healthy restaurant environment in a village will bring people in to shop and do other things in the village. And so that's another reason why, for me, you know, limiting parking for existing restaurants is hard for me. I would rather see us be a little easier on the parking, but limit further huge development in restaurant bar business in some other way in our village, because I do think it needs to be limited. And again, I don't think any of us entertained any thought that we were going to be some final word here, because we all know anything's going to be worked over thoroughly, but especially something like this. And I just think we were all trying to kind of, you know, throw it open for something brand new. Just throw open the windows and see what happens. That's my idea.
Well, I was not here at the meeting, but I did watch the video of the meeting itself. And my concern is that the village is made up of a number of different parts. I mean, half of our village, we have a residential overlay district on, and those can only be residential. And those residents are in the parking mix because, as Nels mentioned, you know, there's 300 residential parking permits out there. So they're trying to find parking the same as the restaurants are and the retail businesses are. I think that, you know, I agree, you know, maybe parking in Capitola Village needs to be looked at again, and we need to come up with some fresh approaches and ideas for doing that. I thought we tried to do some to allow existing restaurants to expand, you know, within existing spaces. We did some tweaks there. But if we're going to do this, you know, I've heard loud and clear from a lot of people who want fewer cars in the village. And so how are we going to, you know, talk about closing the Esplanade part of the time and having fewer cars in the village if we're looking at sort of intensifying the parking requirement by changing up uses? And how it's all going to settle out, I'm not certain. But to go forward without having some dialogue with the sort of stakeholders in the village, and I think is a mistake. And I think it's a huge mistake to say, oh, well, the city council will just have that public discussion, because it's my understanding they're quite intent on trying to vote on this zoning ordinance before the election. You know, they have 4 meetings scheduled, 2 meetings in August and 2 meetings in September. So you're not gonna, you know, you don't have any time in there to have any kind of dialogue with the public that needs to take place before a change as significant as this happens. I'm not saying that, you know, it should or it shouldn't happen, but we absolutely have to have some conversation with all of the people who are involved in this before we make such a big change, I think.
Okay. Well, I agree. I don't think that's something that we should just, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, okay, so, interesting, and the point about the process is a good one that both you and Nels have raised, and we have to be careful about that. But putting that aside for a second, I am not comfortable with the status quo with a few tweaks to it here for a couple reasons. One, as I've said many times, I think it's terribly illogical and irrational. But that's not the main. The main reason is that for 35 years we have really not gotten very far. We've gotten a little ways in terms of starting the process to get an off-site parking solution, which is the solution. The ultimate solution is to expand that off-site parking solution, and we need to, it's time we get more proactive and stop just tweaking an ordinance that's been around for 35 years. And things have changed, times have changed, people's habits have changed. And one of the ways to do that, I think this is one opportunity now that we should not miss, by just changing how many square feet you need for a parking space doesn't get us anywhere, but setting up some kind of system that starts to bring funds in to, and there are many ways that funds can start coming in, and I know that different groups are thinking about this, but this is certainly one opportunity. So, I mean, what I took away from our meeting last time, the best alternative to me is some kind of structure where if you want to expand, you pay an in lieu fee, and you can get out of the in lieu fee if you have parking spaces, so it kind of reverses. It's the in lieu fee is in lieu of parking spaces, kind of other way around. The parking spaces are in lieu of the fee if you can find some someplace. And start to use that and other methods to think about the expansion of the public parking, the off-site parking solution, because that solves many of the problems that we're talking. That's the answer, I think, ultimately, if Capitola is going to solve this problem at all. So that's why. But I think I agree that we have to get input, and we're not in a position to make that decision. But I think we would not be doing our job if we just kind of moved along with the same kind of ordinance we have now.
Right. I would just like to see us do something, I mean, you know, as a planning commission, you know, send a letter to, I don't know how we do it, send a letter to the city council or whatever, and say that they need to initiate a process, and here are some of the things that need to be looked at. Because clearly, if you're going to create any kind of parking district, you know, however you're going to do that, the people down, the property owners and everyone have to buy in to creating that district. You know, we can't just do those kinds of things on our own. And I also agree, I do think times are changing. I think what has sort of been the standard over, you know, a lot of years may be different now. And so it is time to look at some more innovative ideas about, you know, how are we going to solve some of these problems. But I think those, they sort of go both ways, you know, more intense use in the village and less cars. You know, you've got sort of a double whammy there, and how do we figure out how to make that work?
No, I agree. I think it's something that, at the time, I think now that we're involved in this discussion on our zoning and parking spaces, it's something that we need to take a look at and maybe throw some ideas out there. Obviously, the business community would have not only should they have input, but they're going to have a real voice in this process.
Right.
If there's some type of overlay district. You know, but at the same time, the hotel property, or Swenson's property, whatever he chooses to do with it, is a special project. We set that aside. Whatever happens in that property for parking is its own issue. The mercantile brings its own set of circumstances together, but for the rest of the village, the intensity maybe can change, but, you know, we could name, I won't name restaurants, but there are restaurants you could go down there any day of the week or weekend and find many open tables. And there are other restaurants that you have to get in line to get inside of. And so, you know, if a business is going to be successful, then that's great. I think it'd be nice to help them. But they're going to be successful on their own merit. The intensity is going to be really based on, we could use Gail as an example. She has a very successful business. Parking is always an issue, even though she has a little more, she's not inside the village. But that's because she's created a successful business. And that's what I'd love to see in the village, is a more successful business. And if a restaurant wanted to expand into a neighboring area that maybe is not currently considered a bar or a restaurant that has the square footage that we've already outlined, then I'd like to see us make that person more successful. Maybe they move into one of the restaurants that is not as successful and it's a wash, but at the same time, I feel like we're kind of tying their hands. So that was the reason for the discussion. So with that, I know a timeline is always an issue for this group, but what about sending this out maybe for the traffic and parking, at least to get a look at it? And
So I'd like to chime in on that for the traffic and parking. We'd be happy to bring this to the traffic and parking. The 2 times that I brought issues and options to traffic and parking, and also the draft zoning code. And they sent a really clear message during those 2 meetings that village parking standards should stay the same, and also that in those, there's some exceptions we are allowing for different types of parking studies and shared parking, and they were very clear that those exceptions should not be applicable to the village. So I have concerns with, I was thinking, well, I think we've had clear direction from them before, and maybe if we start tweaking things, we should go back to them, or if there are certain ideas that you'd like to consider, we could go back to them and see what their opinion are on the couple ideas that you would like to consider. And with the slides we have tonight, I think there's 5 different areas that we have options for, and maybe we treat this as an issues and options work session and just talk about each of the 5 slides and say, you know, out of the 3 options, there's no appetite for two of these options, and we want to stick with one, or we'd like you to come back with more ideas regarding options 2 and 3 or something like that, just so we can maybe filter these down a bit for seeing where, if you're.
And could you, if you do that, could you be sure to let them hear the dialogue that happened
Mhm.
tonight about, you know, our responses to concerns and, you know, possibly finding other ways to limit restaurant and bar growth, not
Yes.
through
Yeah.
parking?
So I know I'm interrupting you, but I think this is really important. I have seen so many parking discussions fail in Capitola because we go to someone like the Parking and Traffic Commission and say, okay, we've got the answer for you this time. This is what, you know, we're proposing. And I sincerely believe if we want to be successful, we're going to have to back up a little bit and have a genuine discussion with, you know, the village mainly, but also the rest of the community about what is and is not happening with parking. What are people doing in other places? Somebody needs to analyze, you know, how this is going to impact, you know, the residents, how it's going to impact the neighborhoods. We need to have a much more thoughtful approach to, I hate to use the word educate because that drives me nuts, but to inform the community about what some of the options could be and what would be the benefits of that happening. I just see over and over in Capitola, you say this and, you know, you get the response that you got, no, we don't want anything to change. And so we've got to figure out a different way to introduce this to people and bring it forward and make it happen if we really want to achieve something.
I agree. I know Jamie sent us out on the Friday update a couple weeks ago about the parking issue, and I don't know if you heard feedback, but I think it went to all the city council, and maybe, you know, maybe it needs to be moved up to that level and be more of a public dialogue and, you know, something to the city council. You're going to start working with them pretty soon, right?
Next week.
Yeah, maybe this is something that's vetted to them and see
So,
what,
yeah, and during issues and options, there was a discussion about, we had a discussion about the workers in the village and brought that to the city council during their discussion on issues and options. That was something that actually started that conversation during issues and options. This is another one we can highlight, we can bring to them as a bigger matter, show them the red lines that we've made thus far, and then do a bigger, take a broader look at this as we go and see where they direct us.
See, I almost think trying to do it as part of this zoning ordinance, you're really, I mean, this is a big issue, and it needs more than just a few red lines in a zoning ordinance being
It's also going to be a
presented.
big issue with coastal.
yeah, the
probably.
coastal
Right.
commission have an issue, yeah.
I tend to agree with Commissioner Westman's comments just now. I'm sitting back listening to all of it, and I have to agree. I think if we were going to make monumental changes to the parking environment in the village, it would require a fair amount of outreach, otherwise it'll probably fall off the rails because we failed to do that. And I have some, some selfish concerns about losing momentum with the zoning code. We're pretty far along at this point. I think that effort would take a lot of time. I think we would need to do some analysis to do it right. And I'm not sure that doing it through the city council adoption process is right. Now, we could always put this on the side burner and work through it, but
Yeah,
as I hear Nell speak, it's been an ongoing issue for 35 years, and we've made some progress here and there, but I have a hard time believing within a couple of months we can come up with a magic bullet, have a solution, everyone's happy, and we move forward.
Well, I don't think that that's a reason not to try to address it now.
And I'm not
so-
suggesting we don't try to do it now, but maybe it's not something we delay the ordinance update for.
Because
We
I
can
think-
work on
I
it
think
sort of
the,
concurrently.
Ordinance, because it does have to go through the coastal commission, it's gonna get a lot of eyes on it. And I think if we just keep delaying it, then we just keep putting this problem off. So I don't know, I don't wanna say delay the process. However, I'm not sure the process is ever gonna get completed anyway, based on some of the city council discussion. But, I think we need to continue the discussion at this, before we just move through the zoning and say, well, we gotta get the project. And trust me, I understand your desire to get this thing done. It's a huge monumental task for the zoning update, and I think you're doing a great job in that process. But for me, I'd rather see us try to address the issue and get input from everybody. I don't think it's something we should try to address as a planning commission alone, but if we're gonna do it, let's get it done and do it right before we get it in our update.
So if this is gonna derail the zoning update process, which I kind of think, maybe it has that potential for doing, then I don't know that I like making small changes to the, I'd rather just leave it the way it is and say, we're not, that way the coastal commission doesn't have an issue with it because it's already been, it is what it is, and just say we're gonna deal with it separately after the process, rather than make a few changes in how many square feet for this kind of use and how many, And it looks like we came up with a new state-of-the-art ordinance now, when, at least in my opinion, we haven't. And as far as the parking committee, with all due respect, and I'm not trying to be critical, but they've had 35 years. And I don't think that the progress, the work product is that good yet in terms of the solution.
So I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. All the red lines that we've done for the parking and loading, we would throw those out and just keep what we've got in existence, or would we go with any of the red lines that we've already?
I'm favoring just saying, don't even, don't touch that section.
Just go back.
Don't make small changes, which suggests that we have now refined the parking section of our ordinance to our satisfaction.
I think just to add to this, what we tried to do with the draft that originally came to you was to carry forward the existing rules. So it may be formatted in a different way, presented in a different way, but it was an attempt to carry forward the existing village parking regulations. So I think that if the planning commission wants to sort of not make substantive changes to the existing parking regulations in the village, I think the planning commission can do that with the draft that you've been working with.
So if I could, at the late hour, maybe make a recommendation that we table it until the next special meeting, and, because I personally like an opportunity to go back and read the draft instead of the redlined draft, because we made a lot of, I thought, progress from the draft, and I'd like to go back and read it again before I agree that we should just throw the baby out with the bathwater and stop. Can we just continue that item until our next special meeting and bring it back at that point?
I'm good with that. Ed?
I know they're growling at me. I'm feeling the daggers.
Yeah.
No, the only comment I was going to make in response to Commissioner Newman's suggestion that maybe we just leave it completely as is, I think the commission's made some positive changes that, at least in the interim, would be worth keeping, at least in my opinion, particularly getting rid of the 6-seat rule. even if it's for a shorter period while we get the bigger solution. From an administration standpoint, I would really want to see that change implemented, but
Right. I sort of agree that the draft parking ordinance that we originally got from staff didn't make any major changes in parking standards or parking requirements, things that the Coastal Commission would probably have issues with. We did make some corrections, which were, minor modifications to make the parking work, but we really did not include any major changes. So I could live with the draft that we had. It's fine with me if we want to table it. It's almost 7 o'clock, and, we can talk about this the next time we have a special meeting on the zoning. But I think when you read it, you'll see, other than getting rid of sort of I think everything we did was to help businesses out by not having to count tables and chairs and things like that, which is a difficulty for staff.
But was that in the original draft or was that in the red line, is my question?
That was in the original draft, but I'm pretty certain.
I think that's right, and I think we modified it a bit based on
the red line.
commission direction.
We modified the allowed square footage.
Right.
And then the other change was to codify, we didn't have a codified process for when we do parking studies, so that was added to the draft, and then just ease of use was the big thing.
When is your next meeting with the city, or your first meeting with the city council on this item?
Next Thursday.
But when's your last meeting, actually, is what?
Well, if you could vet this out in the first meeting through option issues, that maybe it would give some direction, because we may just be spinning our wheels either way, but
Well, we did notice that that'll go out tomorrow, the packets, and we just kind of took a generalized approach. We're going to look at parts 1 and 2. I think we want to focus on parking. I'd want to agendize it as
Sure.
such so that everybody knows what's the topic it's going to be. We do have a subsequent meeting on the 18th, September 15th, and the 29th of September is the last one on the schedule. But I expect we'll probably need more than that.
and our next meeting would be the first week in September, so
I think it might be September 1st.
first, yeah, the Labor Day, yeah.
So you're saying August 18th, September
11th,
5th?
18th of August, and then September is the 15th and 29th.
Okay.
So maybe in the month of August, you'd have time to bring
I
that
think
to
the
them?
18th
And
we
then if
could.
we table it to our next meeting, then you would have at least had a chance to talk to the council about it and.
Yep.
Okay? Is that okay?
Yep.
All right, then I think that will be the direction we'll take. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and, we really don't have much time to start a new topic or discussion, so our next meeting will begin in 3 minutes. We'll get ready for that.
So we just have to have a motion to continue this to,
So
We're
we'll
just gonna take a recess, right? So,
Or we'll continue this to the special meeting on September 1st?
this item,
the glossary and the.
yeah.
Or our
Oh,
special,
I'm
the
sorry, yeah,
zoning
we'll
board?
continue until the conclusion of the regularly scheduled meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And so we'll table that and continue after our regular scheduled meeting.
And can I just ask when you intend to bring back the historic preservation ordinance? At what meeting we were going to bring that back, when Susan came back? And I thought it was going to be on tonight's agenda, but
I'll have to re-look at that. I thought we brought it back at the last meeting.
we didn't. I remember I asked you to not, well, you did, but I asked to hold off on it because
For the
Susan wasn't here and I
Okay,
wanted to-
so let's, we'll have to plan on September 1st
Okay.
for that.
Yeah, I'm here September 1st. I think everybody.
You were gone this last meeting.
last meeting, right, it wasn't on that agenda. I thought the previous meeting.
We talked about it.
We haven't gone through the red line version. We have a red line version, but we haven't gone through that.
Thank you for bringing that up, Gail, because I noted that. I've looked on today's agenda for it as well.
Sam Hardin.
So for those of you just coming in, we were just concluding part of our special meeting, and we'll be starting our regularly scheduled agenda, 7 o'clock.
Just watch so many projects.
Mhm.
Work
Yeah.
ahead of time.
I agree. We don't need to redo our roll call and pledge of allegiance, right?
But we'll have to draw straws on the Capitola.
There's only 2 of you. in
No,
there.
not, I can vote on it.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, so we're going to begin our regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting. And since we already had a special meeting, we've done our roll call and pledge of allegiance, so we'll move into oral communications. Do we have any additions or deletions for tonight's meeting? I believe we're
No.
going to switch 2 items, right?
Yes, we've got 2 planning commissioners that will recuse themselves from 419 Capitola Avenue. We were thinking, if you'd like, we could move that to the end. But it looks like we've
Oh.
got 2 zoning code items to
Yeah.
follow up with.
Uh,
Anyway,
It may
so
not make a
doesn't really
difference.
make a difference at this point.
Doesn't make any difference to me when you do it, because we're going to have to come, I mean, it's not like we get to go home,
Yeah.
we just have to
Right.
wait for that.
Okay,
to
so
be
we'll just continue with the regular outline.
It's
Okay,
at the
with
end
that,
anyway.
well, any public comments from the audience? And this item is for the public to speak on items that are not on tonight's agenda. So if you have something that is not on tonight's agenda, then we'll give you a few minutes. And Marilyn, I guess you're
Yes,
not
not
going to
on
speak
tonight's
about
agenda.
the wireless.
This is not on tonight's agenda.
Okay.
In May of 2015, so-called smart meters exploded here in Capitola Shores, causing PG&E and the fire department to come out, and electrical shortages. And I'm going to give a copy of this brochure on the smart meters from Stop Smart Meters. This is a serious public safety and health issue. Fires and explosions, fatalities and serious injuries have occurred from these explosions of the smart meters. From power surges, I understand there's not a surge protector. And this prompted certain localities like in Saskatchewan and other places to recall these meters. And I think the same needs to be done here. There's about 190 approximately pulse modulated frequencies that cause adverse health effects. And I also read that these frequencies are not compatible with a 60 hertz frequency. I'm not an electrical person in the house. And so there are a lot of fires and explosions, and we want to avoid more in Capitola. And I'd like to see you, as a body responsible for zoning and protecting the public health and safety, to take actions like the other localities listed in here. In addition, I like to visit Capitola. I live off of Freedom Boulevard in Aptos, and I noticed that these meters have been put on utility poles where there are also 13 Verizon cell towers, I call them, on utility poles for the 4G technology. Now, my PG&E bill, I think they still have it, says, for safety, do not put tools, equipment, or antennas closer than 10 feet to the power lines. Now, I haven't measured, but there's boxes on these poles. There's the Verizon antenna up there, and there's the power lines. So it's perplexing to me how there could be these warnings of safety, and yet doesn't appear safe. And of course, PG&E doesn't have a history of safety. San Bruno Fire, Diablo Canyon Nuclear Power Plant, PCBs. You remember the Aaron Brockovich film of the chromium-6 contamination. That's all PG&E. I do not feel safe with what PG&E is doing, or the telecom corporation. So I'll leave you with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Okay, do we have anybody else that would like to speak on something that is on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back and we'll open up for commission comments. No commission comments? And how about staff comments? Okay, no staff comments, and we do not have any minutes tonight to approve, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. The consent calendar is items that are placed that we can vote with one motion of all those items. And is there anyone in the public or on the commission that would like to pull the item off of the consent calendar? And I guess we can ask for a motion on,
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
have a motion?
Second?
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, so we have approval for the consent calendar, so if you're here for 211 Esplanade, you don't have to stay if you don't choose to stay for the rest of the evening. That will move us into the public hearing on item 4A, which is 190 El Camino Medio. We'll start off with a staff presentation, and then we'll have discussion. Sir, we're going to do a staff presentation first on yours.
Pardon me again?
We're going to do a staff presentation about your project, and then we'll open up for you to talk.
Well, I applied for a use permit for a bed and breakfast.
Yeah,
Oh, excuse
it's,
me. That's okay.
They need a few minutes and then you can speak.
What again?
They wanted to wait a little until decision.
Okay,
just, give me a couple minutes and we'll bring you up.
I'm
He's
sorry.
very deaf,
Okay, thank you, Gabe, for helping out.
and I would like to say something myself.
Okay, give us a couple of minutes and we'll do our staff presentation, then we'll give you an opportunity to speak. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. Before you is an application for a conditional use permit to operate a bed and breakfast out of an existing residence at 190 El Camino Medio. The property is located in the AR/R1 Automatic Review Residential Single Family Zoning District, and it is directly adjacent to the Central Village. As a part of a citywide code enforcement sweep, city staff notified the owner at 190 El Camino that they were operating a vacation rental without a transient rental use permit. As you can see, the home at 190 El Camino is located just outside of the TRO district. Following the code enforcement case, the owner applied for a conditional use permit to operate the residence as a bed and breakfast. Per the municipal code, a bed and breakfast is defined as a home occupation in which guests rent rooms for sleeping purposes. The rooms are to be rented for transient occupancy, less than 30 days. No more than 4 people may stay within the rented portion, regardless of the number of rooms utilized. In addition to the regular parking requirements being met for the premises, one additional space must be provided for each bedroom available. The existing 3-story residence contains a garage on the first floor, living areas on the second and third floors. While renting on Airbnb, the owner would stay on the second floor while guests rent out the top, which contains 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. Current parking standards for this home require 3 parking spaces, one of which must be covered. Per the survey, as seen here, the property only contains 2 parking spaces, both colored in blue. The owner has historically used 3 uncovered spaces in orange off of El Camino Medio that are only partially located within the property lines and thus do not count towards the required parking. Here you can see an image of the front of the property in relation to and the property line in relation to the existing characteristics of the home and the driveway. The existing 2,500 square foot home is required to have 3 parking spaces on site, completely within property lines. A bed and breakfast use permit requires one extra space for each room rented. Therefore, if the owner wants to rent one room, they're required to have 4 on-site parking spaces, 2 rooms, 5 on-site parking spaces, etc. The existing home only contains 2 legal parking spaces. Here is the proposed parking drawing provided by the applicant. In order to rent out a single room of the existing residence to a bed and breakfast guest, the applicant is proposing to provide 4 on-site parking spaces by placing 2 spots in tandem behind the existing garage spots. There's 32 feet from the back wall of the garage to the front property line. The applicant would like to place tandem parking behind both of these garage spaces. In order to do this, the 2 uncovered spaces would be partially located within the garage and partially outside. The blue line represents the back wall of the existing garage, and the gray line represents the front of the existing garage along El Camino. As you can see, the garage doors would not be functional when all 4 spaces are being used. The code allows tandem parking in front of a garage within the R1 single-family residential zoning district. The uncovered spaces can be considered compact and must be 8 feet wide by 16 feet long, while the covered spaces must be 10 feet by 20 feet long. A minimum of 36 feet are required for the length of these 2 tandem spaces, while the property only contains 32 feet from the back of the garage to the front property line. Therefore, the applicant is requesting a variance to the parking size requirements in order to rent out a single bedroom of the residence to bed and breakfast guests. So pursuant to the municipal code, Planning Commission may grant a variance when it finds that there are special circumstances applicable to the subject property, including size, shape, topography, locations, or surroundings, where the strict application of this title is found to deprive the property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity and under identical zone classification, and 2, that the grant of a variance permit would not constitute a grant of special privilege inconsistent with the limitation upon other properties in the vicinity and zone in which the subject property is situated. So the existing residence is located on a steep sloping lot directly adjacent to the Central Village and TRO zoning districts. The home is built into a cliff, therefore moving the home back to create additional room for parking would be very difficult. Although there are unique circumstances related to the topography of the property, a variance in this case is intended to allow the property owner to intensify their existing single-family use and is not necessary to provide a reasonable property right enjoyed by others in the same zone vicinity. El Camino Medio is a narrow street, and the portion in front of the subject property allows 2-way traffic, shown with the blue arrows. A variance would further narrow the roadway and constrict safe passage of vehicles and pedestrians. In addition, the area in front of the subject property is adjacent to pedestrian stairs, shown in orange, leading from the village to Depot Hill, and the city may want to add sidewalks connecting the stairway to Monterey Avenue at some point in the future, and that's shown in green. Finally, allowing a parking variance to accommodate a bed and breakfast use in residential areas of the village could encourage other property owners to seek parking waivers and exceptions to operate bed and breakfast or other transient rental uses, further exacerbating the village parking issues. For these reasons, staff recommends denial of the variance request and thus denial of application 16107 based on the conditions and findings of approval.
Okay, do we have any questions of staff?
This time.
No questions, staff? Then I'll open it up to, is it Mr. Hunt? Is that?
Thank you, Ryan. You've done extensive research on this application. I only was asking if I have 2 16-foot covered, 2 16-foot uncovered. I'm asking for a variance from 18 to 16 feet. There's enough room for 4 SUVs on the property. That's all I have to say.
Okay. And anybody want to, you want to talk to, you have a question?
Question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Do you live on the property?
Yes, I do.
That's your residence?
Yes.
Any
I
other-
have one question. The presentation said that when it was being rented on VRBO, you were renting the upper level, which is 2 bedrooms. Are you now looking to only rent 1 bedroom?
No, it's a 2-bedroom unit, so it's rented as 2 bedrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Mr. Hunt, I think that's all we need to ask of you, and now we're going to open up to the public for them to have a chance to comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. So now if anyone else would like to, from the public would like to get up and give us any input, this is your opportunity. Okay, Gabe, we'll give you a couple of minutes to tell us.
Just a couple? Might as well walk out now. First of all, hello everybody. I hope you're doing great. And if you're not, then I hope you can make it great later on. Let me see. You all look happy,
Yeah.
except maybe you. It took me, I like to say, I'm only registered that I live in his property, but I don't really live in the house. When he bought the property, I offer my services in exchange to be able to use his driveway for double parking cars when I used to run the parking lot and the Old Capitola Theater. But a long story, short story, yes, this, that, blah, blah, blah. He's old. He's gonna die soon. So why don't you just cut him a little slack, let him have a good time, and go out happy? It's no harm on that. And then by the time you do your project, you put the sidewalks and the roses and flowers. Yes.
Yeah. Gabe, I think we got the gist of your story there.
So you want me to leave now?
Oh, you're welcome to sit down to Mr. Hunt, and he can keep you in line. Well,
I would like another minute.
okay, we'll give you another.
Unless you want me to leave, I leave.
No, I'll give you. You got another minute. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm not helping you. This is for me. This is for me. You ever heard the freedom of speech?
Hey, you're making my job difficult up here. I'm supposed to keep these things in order here. So if you want to talk about Mr. Hunt's property, we'll give you a minute to talk.
I'm talking a little bit about everything. I'm saying hello. But if you ask me to leave, I leave. But you want me to leave?
No, I'm going to give you 1 minute, and then I'm going to ask you to leave. No,
Okay.
just go ahead, Gabe.
Anyway, like I was saying, you can keep everybody happy just for a little longer. And it won't cost much. He's not really asking to be buried next to the property, you know. And when it comes to me, I'm just the boogeyman. And thank you for everything. I had a great time spending all the years I have been in this town. Everybody has been nice. And right now, I hope that you really consider, and it'll be like a dying wish. And if you decide to go the other way around, then divine justice will come down on everybody and make your town, that you're going to be praying somebody will come in and visit you. Have a nice life.
Thank you, Gabe. All right, so after that, those words of wisdom, looks like we have a couple more people here.
Hi, I'm Bob Edgren. We own the property at 204 Monterey, which is kind of diagonally across from Gordon Hunt's property. Is it possible to get the sky view picture up there again?
There you go.
This one?
Yes. The little green patch there on the deck there is our property.
Okay.
And my bedroom's right where that tree is okay. So I've got a good shot, ear shot and eye shot of what kind of goes on at the Hunt property. And for a number of years, I'm not sure if that was a single family or a duplex. I always figured it was a duplex because he had a renter there in part of it. It was very nice, it was very quiet. She was a teacher. And once Airbnb rolled into town, everything changed. I could hear at night parties, dogs, a lot of dogs. Seems like everybody that come invited there have dogs, and they're not really tuned into the leash laws here in Capitola. I have to do a lot of explaining to people. I get tired of that. But at night, it's just that the noise in that El Camino Medio area, it seems to reverb itself, and you could hear everything. I could hear somebody partying about 5 doors up. So, in addition to that, all that area, the stairs have become like an icon of Capitola. It seems like everybody that comes to Capitola has to do the stairs. I don't know how they find out about it, but it must have been on TripAdvisor or something. So that's been kind of a problem, because we've seen usage of the stairs just from going from people on Depot Hill, maybe 1 or 2 joggers a day, to quite a few joggers a day, and pregnant mothers with their baby buggies doing exercises out there in the middle of the street. That whole little turn there where the blue turns has become a very congested and busy area. I think adding to that congestion and busyness would be a big mistake, personally. You've got service trucks, you've got trucks going in behind the restaurants, behind Sousa's Ice Cream, behind Geisha Sushi, and also the new taqueria owner, the taqueria place. So there, last night there was a plumber there till 12 o'clock at night, or night before last. And there's just a lot of noise there, and I'd like to keep at least as much of the lid on the noise as possible, because, it's like they built a motel in your backyard. It's like, wow. If you have one tenant there that is there all the time, you could kind of deal with that. But if you have a parade of new people every weekend, you never know what to expect, and usually it's not a good surprise. So I also printed these out. Can I pass these out to you guys?
You can hand them to.
Okay. Unfortunately, I only made 4 copies. I had sent those to the city council, but brought them here tonight.
Thank you, sir. Oh,
I believe we got them in the mail.
Oh, you did?
We have
Okay,
them up
great.
here as well.
I want to make another point. Oh, yeah. This kind of goes beyond just Gordon's property there, and that is I'm curious of how this all fits in with the ADA regulations. I mean, when you see a deal like Depot Hill that spent a fortune bringing that place up to ADA regulations, where do these Airbnb and or bed and breakfasts or whatever, how do they fit into the ADA situation?
Yeah, that would go through the process if it gets to that far, if it gets approved. But your time is up now, so we
Can I have
appreciate.
one more minute? Okay.
Thank you
very much.
thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And just so you know, we give you 3 minutes, even Gabe, 3 minutes to speak. So, thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for all your hard work. I know in volunteering for this, it's much appreciated by me and the community. I know that. I'm Steve Ross. I'm up on 218 El Camino Medio and on the Parking and Traffic Commission. A little history on the parking on El Camino Medio. If you don't know, it used to be some parking on there, and there was a lot of hard work by a neighbor fireman to get the parking off there because it's too narrow. So the parking that's hanging over now, it's going to be hanging out into that emergency zone, and I know TJ is very familiar with that. That's just one thing. I'm not super opposed to it because I'm not like the previous speaker that's right there, but there is more rentals going on El Camino Medio. So it's becoming almost like the village as far as vacation rentals. And the parade of like he says, the parade of party atmosphere that goes on in all the rentals up there. So he isn't the only one doing it. So hopefully something going with that. There is also, he proposed originally to me, and unfortunately I didn't get to talk to him. I'd like to talk to him. Maybe we could carry this over and maybe get the other neighbors together about maybe rezoning. I'm not necessarily for opposed rezoning El Camino Medio, because in front of us is a commercial zoning, and rentals. So we're basically surrounded by it already. We don't have like a lot of the vacation rentals have the backyard type thing, so you're not gonna have, most of the time, you're not gonna have the dogs. I know I've seen the 2 dogs he's talking about, and they bark at everybody. But we don't have that backyard thing, you know, that a lot of vacation rentals have. A lot of the noise comes from there. Ours is all coming from, you know, the front. So I think, you know, there is a possibility of entertaining that if the, you know, planning department wanted to get together with the neighborhood and do that. But as far as just having that as the, you know, bed and breakfast right now, I think I have to come up down on the side of my other neighbor on Monterey, that until we get more information about, you know, what can go on El Camino Medio, I hopefully you guys could, you know, carry this over maybe another meeting or 2, and so we could get a more of a chance to talk to him about it. Anyway, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ross. Okay, anybody else wish to speak on this item tonight? Okay, if not, then I'll close public comment period and bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. And with that,
I'll start off.
Oh, go Gail.
Go, Gail. Thank you, staff. You did a really good job. I appreciate the comments and the different ways you approached this. This is the second time we've taken a look at tandem parking for visitor serving uses. The other was in the Mercantile. And I made these comments then, and I'll make them again, and that is that tandem parking is a good tool when you have long-term parking needs, like people who are going to offices, going to be somewhere all day. That's what tandem parking is meant for. It's not really meant for the kind of in and out behavior that happens when, well, I know when I'm visiting someplace, my car doesn't stay in the driveway all day. I'm in, out, I'm all over. People go out, go to the store, do whatever. So for me, tandem parking doesn't really work in this situation. And I think that, I can't support this application because I really believe that it would take a rezoning, and the rezoning for all of El Camino Medio would affect the people on Cliff Drive up above. And it's this incremental expansion of this intensification that I really believe, having just gone through this whole Vision Capitola process, most if not all the people in Capitola are just, they're they feel so impacted, they're upset by that. And I think it's up to us to really hold the line on those impacts, because I'm hearing it loud and clear. And I think this is one of the ones we're hearing constantly, and that is visitor serving, B&B, Airbnb sort of uses. People, by and large, just don't want them in Capitola. I heard it over and over again. So I'm sorry to say I can't support this.
Well, I pretty much agree with Commissioner Ortiz. We heard earlier a request to look at the transient rental district, and perhaps that's something that we should do on a regular basis. When you set up those kinds of zones or any other zoning district, you always create a boundary, and there is someone who is on the other side. So if we're going to make changes to that, it seems to me that we would need to go through a process and, again, notify the residents who would be affected by this that we were going to do that. The current application really doesn't meet our requirements for a bed and breakfast. I think that the El Camino Medio has always been a very narrow and unfortunately busier street than you would normally expect it to be. And I think it's important for us to leave the street as it is. And so I don't think at this point in time I could support this application for a bed and breakfast. I would be willing to look at amending our TRO district at some point if we want to have that discussion.
So, the bed and breakfast approach to this is to get around the obviously, the TRO zoning for this, and I don't think it works too well. But I do, I'm sort of sympathetic to this particular lot being in the transient rental zone, because I do think it's, you know, it's sort of about as close to the heart of the village as you can get. And it is different from the others on El Camino Medio. It's separated by the stairs. I think it was the first one built into the cliff. And it was done by a spec builder. And the others are all custom architectural homes that people either live in or have as second homes. This one is much, you know, this one is much more like a vacation rental to me, and it's located more like a vacation rental to me than the others. But that is a process, and I don't think this is the right process to get there. I think we have to go through the rezoning process and let everyone be heard on that.
And I agree with everything that's been said. I personally look at the B&B conditional use in a residential zone and feel that B&Bs used to be very different from what they are now. And it used to be having somebody come into your home and stay for a couple of days, and it was quiet. It wasn't a party atmosphere. It wasn't the VRBO vacation rental thing that it has become now. And there are a lot of residents in Capitola that have, you know, really thought about where they bought their house and made sure that they were outside of that vacation TRO zone because they want to live there full time. And putting a vacation rental or a bed and breakfast that's really a vacation rental right next door does definitely need a lot more process than just a conditional use permit. So I can't support the application either.
Okay, and I would agree. If it was a likability factor, Mr. Hunt, you would win me over here. And unfortunately, I think sometimes it's confusing because I think the parking issue, and I'm not sure, Mr. Hunt, you're up to speed really, because I know your concrete driveway goes out 16 feet or so, but the reality is part of that is in a right-of-way. It's not in your legal property. Is that correct? Right. So it's a little bit misleading, I think, to you that you don't really have all that parking, although you currently use that for parking. But again, I think based on the zoning, that it would deter me from being able to support it. And if, you know, I also agree that it seems like the right place for a rental because it's so close to Village, and I know people that actually have stayed there. I think, you know, the option is to look at rezoning, and it looks like you may have some support from some of your neighbors. So with that, I could not really support it either. So I guess I'm looking for a motion to deny
I'll
this
move to
request.
deny this application for the conditions and findings that are listed.
Okay,
I'll
so,
second that.
so I have a motion, a second to deny the request. All those in favor?
Aye.
So, Mr. Hunt, I don't know if you caught the whole gist of everything, but maybe Ryan could go over, could you do that, go over there with the options, or staff could at another time from this point? Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, with that being done, we're gonna move to item B on the Verizon Wireless Communication Facility. So, staff report from Ryan, it looks like.
So I'm going to recuse myself on this.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure technically whether I need to, because the applicant isn't the property owner, but I think it's probably the prudent thing to do.
Okay.
Can I ask something since he's so deaf?
Uh,
Can I ask something
no,
about
well,
since he's so deaf?
Yeah, he's all done, but you know what, Gabe, if you could, staff will help you out, if you go up to the office later to find out what you need.
I'm done too. Done means nice and polite, get the hell out of here.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you for your time, all of you, and have a good time in your town,
Thank you, Gabe.
because it is your town.
Okay, so staff report?
Before you is an application for a design permit and a conditional use permit to construct 2 new cylindrical antennas on the roof of the existing office building at 4400 Capitola Road, which is the AAA building. Since the proposed facility is not a co-location and is proposed within the required setbacks of a restricted zone, it requires a conditional use permit with approval before the Planning Commission. The municipal code states that in no event may a new wireless facility be located within 300 feet of a restricted zoning district, including residential, public facility, parks and open space, and commercial residential. The proposed new small cell facility would be located along Capitola Road in the professional office zoning district. It would also be within 300 feet of the following restricted land uses: multifamily residential, single-family residential, and commercial residential, and thus does not comply with setback restrictions. Those two stars show the relative locations of the two antennas on top of the building. The Federal Telecommunications Act of 1996 states that local governments cannot prohibit personal wireless communication services. Although the Capitola Municipal Code restricts a new facility from being located within 300 feet of a restricted zoning district, the FCC's regulations pertaining to these wireless facilities may preempt the city's ability to deny a permit if the applicant can demonstrate that the city's regulations are tantamount to prohibiting the provisions of a wireless service. In order to be exempt from the city's setback restrictions, the applicant must demonstrate that the new facility would eliminate or substantially reduce a significant gap in the carrier's network, and that there are no alternatives to the design and location of the facility that could reduce said gaps in the least intrusive means possible. In order to prove that a significant gap exists in coverage, Verizon submitted cell coverage maps, existing and future capacity graphs, and as well, they conducted a drive test in the surrounding area. Per the existing and proposed coverage map shown, there is a lack of quote-unquote good in-building coverage within the area east of the Capitola Mall, and that the proposed new small cell site will fix this gap in coverage. Verizon also provided capacity graphs on their existing facilities, which currently serve the subject area. These graphs show that the existing capacity is exhausted. Once the capacity is exhausted, it severely compromises Verizon's network, serving the neighborhoods and commercial areas east of 41st Avenue, leading to poor connectivity, loss of internet connections, and extremely slow data speeds. And then Verizon also conducted a drive test, which showed that showed slow data speeds and poor service throughout the subject area. So in addition to the applicant proving that a significant gap exists, they must also demonstrate that their proposal constitutes the least intrusive means to mitigate said gap. Verizon must demonstrate that they have considered alternative antenna and equipment designs and co-location or less sensitive site locations. Per Verizon's capacity and coverage information, there is a gap in coverage east of the Capitola Mall and 41st Avenue. Verizon focused their search along Capitola Road between 42nd Avenue and 45th Avenue, as seen here. In order to improve coverage in the target area, in order to improve coverage in the target area while still maintaining some degree of setbacks to nearby restricted zoning, the applicant focused their search within the Capitola right-of-way and shopping area directly south. The applicant provided an alternative site analysis for the new antenna facility, which shows that they have analyzed multiple utility pole locations and existing retail and office buildings. The proposed site at 4400 Capitola Road was the only site that would allow Verizon to lease space and also meet Verizon's height requirements for the new antennas to effectively reach the surrounding population. So planning staff analyzed Verizon's location information and researched alternative sites that could potentially help fill the alleged gap, which is shown in gray here, while better meeting the setback restriction. Staff requested that the applicant analyze a few commercial sites to the west, which would better meet restricted zone setback standards and be located in a preferred zone. Specifically, we requested that the applicant analyze the Capitola Mall, shown in the blue star, and the Bank of America, also shown in the blue star. and explain why an antenna facility at these locations would not help fill the said gap. Verizon explained that their existing facilities cover the Capitola Mall and Bank of America sites currently, and the purpose of this new small cell site is to help serve the area east of the mall, as identified in their existing coverage map. Verizon stated that a small cell site at this location at 4400 Capitola Road will better distribute cellular traffic to the coverage gap area than would a macro, such as a tall building or a standalone tower site at the mall or Bank of America to the west. Verizon indicated that these small cells are intended to help offload capacity of larger sites nearby. The specific purpose of the site along Capitola Road is to better serve the commercial areas and residential neighborhoods east of the mall and 41st Avenue, since increasingly more and more people are using wireless services within their homes. The proposed wireless facility will consist of two 2-foot tall antennas located on the roof of 4400 Capitola Road. The antennas are proposed on opposite ends of the building rooftop, one in the northwestern corner and one in the southeastern. In addition to the antennas, the applicant is proposing to install ancillary equipment on the rooftop consisting of 2 remote radio units, 1 mounted GPS antenna, and power and fiber cables connecting the 2 antennas to the ancillary equipment. The antennas will be the only thing visible except for the GPS antenna, which would extend roughly 1 foot above the existing roof line. The applicant is proposing to install a 6-foot, 2-inch tall equipment cabinet on the ground below the existing roof line in the southeastern corner of the building, shown in blue. So here is the proposed southern elevation. The 2-foot tall antennas, which are shown in red, will extend 2.5 feet above the existing roof line. The cabinet box is shown in blue. The existing roof is 32 feet tall, and the total height of the antenna addition would be 34 foot 6 inches, which is compliant with the height restrictions of that zoning code. Staff did not feel that additional screening of the antennas was necessary due to the proposed height, parapet design of the roof, and the existing tree line on Capitola Road. So on the left is a close-up of the antenna and ancillary equipment mountings. Only the antennas and the small GPS receiver will be visible above the existing mansard walls. The antennas will be located within a canister screen to mimic the design of rooftop vents. An example canister antenna design and installation can be seen on the right. To mitigate impacts of the use on surrounding commercial uses and neighbors, the Planning Commission may condition the application related to location, design, maintenance, and operation of the proposal. They may require redesign or relocation of the facility and may also direct the applicant to resubmit a revised proposal for further consideration. However, the Planning Commission may not deny an application based on environmental effects of radio frequency emissions. According to Section 332C of the Telecommunications Act, no state or local government or instrumentality thereof may regulate the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facilities on the basis of the environmental effects of radio frequency emissions to the extent that such facilities comply with the Commission's regulations concerning such emissions. Therefore, radio frequency emissions were not reviewed as a part of this application. Staff recommends approval of application 15156 based on the conditions and findings of approval.
Okay. And I have a quick question of staff. Remind me, at one point we were doing a third-party gap analysis. I think that we were asking the vendor to pay for what we selected. Is that true?
So we are no longer having the third-party review these
Okay.
applications. Sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Well, I was curious. I know we did not the last couple, but initially we started out doing a third-party review that we selected, I think, the vendor, and we're no longer doing that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So we may still in the future, depending on the application type.
Okay.
One of the earlier ones, it was really a question in staff's mind of whether or not some alternative commercial sites would have provided the same service level, and we need an outside expert to do that. In some of these cases where they're really stuck in residential neighborhoods, where you can move it 100 feet in one direction, but you're still in a residential neighborhood, there just really isn't a need for that expertise.
Okay, got it, thank you. Okay, with any other questions of staff?
I just want to make one clarification, and that is that we are allowed to make sure that the FCC requirements are being met.
That is a condition of our approval.
Okay. With that then, do we have anyone that would like to speak that from the representation?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jason Osborne, representing Verizon Wireless, and thanks again to Ryan, who could have my job on this side if he wanted. Writes very well. I will, for one point of clarification in regards to the alternative sites analysis, in regards to the Capitol Mall, and I hope I convey this to Ryan, I'm not sure if I did, but we did have what we'll call a search ring for the Capitola Mall. We do have existing coverage there. And one of our locations we tried to actually place a site on that was separate from this was at 2121 41st Avenue. And we would need both of them. And unfortunately, because these are essentially small cells, they really only cover, I'm going to call it, 250 yards, 300 yards. From the mall, it just doesn't reach enough. And I'm happy to address your FCC questions and compliance when you're ready.
I'm ready. Go ahead. Yeah, I just am wondering how you're planning to do that.
Okay, so I did speak to Ryan earlier about the report, and I admit the report is somewhat confusing. I don't know if you can pull it up, but I can clarify that the site is out of compliance if from an occupational hazard standpoint. So what that means is basically if you were able to climb up on the roof through a locked door, climb up out on the parapet, climb out on the 45-degree pitch, and stand, if you could stand, in front of the antenna, yes, it does fail, and that's called occupational hazard. So within the 5-foot to 9-foot range, you are correct. It fails. However, there are mitigation measures tied within the report that stipulate not only do we have to place warning signs going up the building, a rope around the back of the parapet, and the other mitigation measures essentially are the owner has to notify us if there's going to be anybody doing work on, say, gutters or replacing the wood roof or anything of that. And what we do is we simply shut off the site. Very similar to occupation hazards, say, in big air handlers on the top of buildings, gigantic fans, you turn it off before you stick your hand in it. I mean, it's a very similar type of installation. And then the report does go further, albeit very complicated to read, but it does go further and show a number of diagrams there's an appendix B on the chart that shows in those green items. So basically what happens is the composite exposure is less than 100%, which is the FCC allowable limitation. And then on the ground, there's nothing more than 5%. So I'm sure everybody pays their registration at AAA because going to the DMV is a pain. It's less than 5% of the FCC allowable limitation. So if you were to grab a ladder, put it up, climb up, then that's where the occupational hazard comes in, and that's where we work with the owner to make sure we shut down the sites. Does that sort of help? And the report does stipulate that as long as we make efforts to, in other words, the gate's locked, you have to go through Buck to get up to the rooftop, and that's secure. There's 2 locks that go through there, so you have to go above the elevator, and then you have to go up through the front gate. Then you would still have to climb out on the rooftop, which you would fall off the rooftop before the antenna got you anyway, because it's at an angle. So I hope that.
Is there another antenna that does a better job with that? I mean, is it antenna related, or we haven't seen this issue before?
It is. Most antennas, I will generalize, but most antennas, if you climb in front of them at a 3-foot rate and stick your head in front of it, I mean, you're failing EMF. I mean, that's just the reality of it. But the problem is nobody can climb up there, and it's outside of anybody's. What the FCC considers the hazard is if it's in a public, what they call it, unsuspecting. So you're going inside of something that you're not aware there's a danger. So, and we have to have the warning signs on, and then we work with the property owner to ensure that those are being met and nobody goes up there and works on the shingles and those sort of things. So.
My last question is, I don't really know how to ask this one, but I know we've had several different Verizon installations that have come before us lately. And this report, this is the first time I've seen this kind of report. should we be looking for that kind of information on other sites? Or why is it in this packet and it wasn't in the previous packets?
Well, it's funny. I was just here 2 weeks ago, and it was a different vendor. We used a different vendor, and EMF reports and how they're reported are treated differently by different engineers. And what I've asked moving forward, and most of the carriers do this, they provide a snapshot of, okay, if there is an occupational hazard, what are the hazards and where are those located, much as that report does. And there's generally another snippet that makes it really easy to find. I mean, I've been doing this 18 years, and it took me an hour and a half on my car to go, oh, I get it. Usually there's a snippet that says, okay, at the ground level within X number of feet, there's a specific percentage and we're adhering to it. I talked to the vendor and said, okay, guys, we have to provide this so it's crystal clear.
Okay.
I know that one other question did come up as far as how we, if it's okay to say, Ryan, how the FCC, how we deal with these sites once they're approved. Every cell carrier is required to register their site with the FCC within 45 days. And those standards are same with the CPUC. So we have to file with the state, so the California Public Utilities Commission and the FCC. And that information is provided to the FCC, and there's a website called wireless2.fcc.gov. And that, after those 45 days, all of those sites are essentially listed. You can download a spreadsheet, and it identifies every site from here to New York. Essentially every site that is managed by the FCC. And that's a requirement of carriers have to do it.
Okay.
So hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much.
Or
It does.
questions. So.
Anybody else? Jason, I had one question for you. So are you the rep directly for Verizon? You mentioned different vendors and we heard different reports and stuff. Are you the main rep for?
I'm the main rep for Verizon, but I'm not an RF engineer. So we have to outsource that to an outside third party. Verizon does their own reports, but we found, say, 15, 18 years ago that people could think there's a conflict of interest. So these are outsourced now to outside vendors. It's just a subcontractor of the carrier, and so we have to outsource it.
Okay, I asked staff, but I'll ask you, because this is like the fourth one the last few months. Is there any way you can bring these in one month, one meeting so we can look at all of them, or is this going to be an ongoing trickle every month or so?
Probably an ongoing trickle, because I would think that each one of the applications has a specific, I mean, if they're all presented perfectly to staff and submitted at the same time, but based on shot clock rules and based on designs and criteria and alternative sites, it's a little tough to get them all bundled
They're gonna be
together.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, believe me, I would have rather, I mean, I love driving to Capitola, so I'll drive here as many times as you want, but it is easier when they're easier for us too when they're one, but there's different shot clock requirements I'm sure that staff has to adhere to and those sort of things.
Okay, thank you, Jason. If there's no other questions, then I will open this up to the public for those who would like to comment on this item. Again, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes, so you'll have a little light system there to help you know where you're at in the process.
Signed in.
Thank you. And if you could just give us your name, sir, and sign in, that'd be great.
Yes, Michael Smith, resident of Capitola. This is very reminiscent of another case we took before the Planning Commission in Santa Cruz. And my first question is, what is immediately under the roof of where those antennas would be placed? Are there any people there in offices? Do you have that information? Because we had a case of where Verizon wanted to place similar antennas on top of a building near the boardwalk. Well, right under there was a living quarters of a person that we knew. And what I don't hear coming out here is what kind of testing has been done of that immediate floor underneath the roof, and what level of radiation is coming through, because they had not done that with this other case. And when they started to put the antennas up, we took a device which measures the amount of radiation coming in, and it went off the grid. And they said, well, it can't happen, and so forth. They took their very, very expensive material in and did the same testing, and it went off the grid. And they said, oh, we can't place it there, you know, because it's affecting him virtually 24 hours a day, as it would affect any people in that living quarter or resident or office quarter during the day. And so that would be my first question, is what has been done to check the radiation level? The second very much concern that I have is that once you approve this, my understanding is that if another company comes in, wants to place another antenna or an extension of these antennas in, it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, for you to deny because of the FCC regulations. And I would be very concerned about other companies coming in and wanting to extend that even further. And so these are my two very, very deep concerns, because ultimately they did not place the antennas above this person's residence because of the amount of radiation coming through. And so I'll leave it with that, but I have deep concerns about this. You know, I think it should be denied.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Maureen Smith, also a resident of Capitola, and I think my husband just forgot to tell you about the fact that the United States has the lowest standards in the developed world for radiation exposure. And those laws were written by the corporations like Verizon and AT&T and PG&E, who have license to kill, basically. We have been looking at Peace United Church, which is radiating preschool children on their campuses. We took our device and measured throughout the campus and found the highest radiation that went off the charts right in front of where the preschool is. We also found it right in front of the sanctuary. However, people aren't staying there in the front of the sanctuary 8 hours a day, and preschool's probably 4 hours a day. But children have very sensitive brains. We are planning to confront the ministry there and ask them to either close the preschool or get rid of the cell towers. They'll probably tell us they're in contract and cannot get rid of the cell towers because, after all, nobody can do anything about it, right? They've taken away the rights of us to oppose these things. And you mentioned environment, but health is a major, major issue here. And you can't do anything about it, I realize it, but the people who own the property can do something about it, and they can use the precautionary principle, the basic used in science that says, first, do no harm. There is much harm. Where we're living right now in Capitola, we're only doors away from radiation. We've measured there too, and there's about 5 mobile homes that are being highly radiated. The radiation's coming from the cell tower that's behind the brewery and the winery, Pelican Ranch Winery. And we haven't discussed with those people if they're suffering from brain tumors or cancer or what, but they well could be, because that's the result of being exposed to this kind of thing. Besides that, we're going to take the issue to Staff of Life, which is radiating people in Horst Schneider's pharmacy. People are getting ill, and it's from the damn cell towers. There's no doubt about that. And I would kindly ask the people who own the property not to sign with Verizon. Please do not sign it. Wait till we get 5G. It'll be 10 times as bad.
Thank you, Mrs. Smith.
Hi, Bob Edgren again. I had a couple of questions, possibly for you. Do we have a map of all the other cell phone towers in Capitola? We addressed Verizon. How many other companies are there besides Verizon that we're looking at?
You know what, at this point, sir, this isn't really like a question-answer period, and I don't know what that is. You could maybe check with,
Well, what I'm leading to is.
Say there was a website where they're all
yeah, no, I mean, I
registered
don't
and
know
you
if the
can go
staff
and
knows
look.
that, but we're gonna say you could check with
What I'm alluding
Jason
to
to see.
is, it's nice to see what Verizon's doing, but what
Right.
about the other companies around Verizon's towers? I mean, that's a big factor in itself.
Right.
You know, I mean, let's do the crunch the numbers of electromagnetic fields and see where we're at. Just not look at Verizon.
Right.
Okay, that's where I'm going with this. I'd like to know the monetary compensation for having these towers.
Yeah, we don't have I don't have the contractual information on that. We're just here to approve the process of the permit for it being there. But Jason may have some information for you afterwards. And I don't believe our staff has that type of information
Well, that'd be
typically. It's not something
interesting
we're
thing
privy
look
to.
at, too. I was just reading about I'm no expert on this field at all, but I was just reading about the World Health Organization's website about low-frequency electronic fields and what they do to the human body. Not a pretty thing. I have a cell phone. I think most people do. I think you have to be prudent in this area because I just think there's a lot that we don't know. And I do know that cell phone companies have the ability to ramp up their electromagnetic fields, their power. I know they have this ability. So you may say, okay, let's agree to this. But they also have the ability behind the door, I believe, to increase that.
Right.
And there's a lot of questions swirling around this most people don't understand, including myself. But I just say, be careful, that's all.
I think you would get a lot of agreement there, sir. Okay, go ahead and step forward.
Hi, I'm Laura Malia, and I live in the neighborhood right behind the proposed cell phone tower. And I was not too aware of the dangers, but I got the postcard and I looked into it. And I was shocked to see that there's so much research about the dangers of these towers. And specifically, I know this isn't question and answer, but I wonder, maybe somebody could answer, what is the microwatts per square centimeter that this tower will enable? Like, what is the maximum microwatts per square centimeter? Does anybody know?
Well, that would be a technical question for Jason, and I don't know that.
Okay, I mean, I just would want to know because that would affect, you know, whether I want to stay living here or not, now that I know about the dangers. And I'm just, you know, it's not shocking to me that the rights of people in neighborhoods have been taken away by multi-billion-dollar industries, and it's not shocking that that's the world we live in at this point. But I guess, who's the property owner here of the? And this woman back here has a documentary video that she said she lent to you and asked if you'd watched it. Why have you not watched it?
Okay, you know, you're here to address us,
Oh,
so
okay.
that's how
All
this
right,
works.
sorry,
You
I
can
just,
address-
you know, at this point, it's just, whatever you can do. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, do we have anybody else? Okay, if not, then I will close public comment and bring this back to the Planning Commission.
I think
Two
Oh.
more people coming.
Okay.
Hi, my name's Deborah Turner. I too live in Capitola over on Diamond Street. And my question is, how come in Europe they have peer-to-peer reviews showing that EMF says things that are harmful to our body, but here we can't use that and show that as a resource? But they're allowed to come in, and it's only lopsided. It doesn't seem fair as somebody who lives here. I mean, I don't know if these folks live here, But literally, I live right on the other side of that wall, and I'm kind of concerned because I live on a second-story unit. So I'm just concerned about the health risk. And I feel like there's a lot of folks in my neighborhood that live in the Jewel Box that would feel the same way. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello.
I'm Bonnie Johansson. I also have a property on Diamond Street, right on the other side of the wall. And I spoke with Mr. Kaplan the other day. He was kind enough to listen to me when I expressed my concerns. And I'm actually here to give him this if he's willing to receive it. This is a resolution that was passed by the California Medical Association 2 years ago, in which they say that they support the efforts to reevaluate microwave safety exposure levels. And they say the CMA supports efforts to implement new safety exposure limits to levels that do not cause human or environmental harm based on scientific research. And then they have several pages of studies. So this is a mainstream medical association, the California Medical Association, that is saying the FCC limits are not safe. These laws, as someone else mentioned, these laws were passed in the 90s, a long time ago, way before we had the levels that we have now. The lobbyists basically bought out the politicians and made laws that allow the corporations to do whatever they want. They're allowed to say you can't consider the health issues. So basically, I understand that, you know, our hands are tied. And so it really, really falls, again, on the property owner, like someone else said. So again, I want to appeal to Mr. Kaplan that this is a vote of conscience. It's not a legal issue, unfortunately, because the laws are criminal. But this stuff is dangerous. And the placement of this particular tower actually violates the City of Capitola regulations for how close an antenna can be to residential property. And yet, on the little thing I got in the mail, it says you can't appeal this. So basically, Verizon can come in, ignore the local government's regulations, and just do what they want. You can't appeal it. The people who work in that AAA building, they didn't even know that there's a cell phone tower going to go on top of the building where they spend 8 hours every day. How fair is that? You know, that's just wrong. So I really want to stress the point that just because Mr. Kaplan got a report from some independent person saying that, oh, the levels are safe, they meet the requirements, the problem is that the FCC levels are not safe. And we are bound by criminal laws, and so we are left only to rely on the individual conscience of the property owners to please don't radiate our neighborhood. We have residences right surrounding that area where people live. And I too am in the position where I have to consider whether I will have to move or not. And that's a big decision that I shouldn't have to face.
Thank you,
It's an
Mrs.
invasion.
Thank you, Ms. Johansson, for speaking.
Marilyn Garrett, part of Wireless Radiation Alert Network, used to teach in Pajaro Valley schools next to fields of pesticides, and my health provider says that's why I have an essential tremor. And Doug Kaplan served on the school board when I was there trying to stop this harm to children. I read microwaves have the same effect on the neurological system. And again, I'm trying to protect life on the planet. And basically, there is no safe amount of this radio frequency microwave radiation. It's increasing exponentially. One article I read said we're getting 10 billion times the radiation in the environment that we received in the 1960s. I fear for children, babies. The other thing is no resident or child has authorized 24/7 increased bodily microwave radiation trespass, which is biologically damaging. Even the World Health Organization, as of May 2011, labels this type of radiation in the same category of carcinogens as lead and DDT and benzene. There've been no, you might have other zoning projects and you talk about the impact to the neighborhood, ADA. Many of us are injured by this. I think it is an issue for the Americans with Disabilities Act. It seems to be just disregarded. It's like a done deal when it comes here. I understand everything's signed and everything's crossed on the agreements, and then you have a public hearing. So I went around to people in the building a couple of days ago. They didn't get a notice of public hearing. They aren't aware that these are radiation emitting facilities that cause damage. It's not like putting up a wood wall or fence somewhere. This is pulsing constantly along with all the other exposures. Verizon, sued the city of Capitola for upholding their ordinance, and big corporate giant, and Capitola doesn't have the resources they said it to fight. So if you can't uphold any kind of zoning, and as one researcher says, with these new iPhones, 4G, 5G, instead of 3 cell towers in an area, they need 100. So where I live, for example, there's 13 Freedom Boulevard, Day Valley, McDonald, within a square mile for Verizon 4G, and my radiation meter, it's off the top, where it is before, it didn't read at all.
Okay,
Let's
Marilyn.
see. I just want to make another point about property owners.
Marilyn, your time is up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Property owners lose their rights. They lose their rights. You cannot get these off your property once you sign. And just, I want to verify, Ryan Sasti told me now the lease agreements are, by state law, 10 years, and the option to extend the lease is on the part of the telecom corporation, not the property owner.
Thank you, Marilyn.
It's a problem, thank you. And I'm going to leave you some literature here.
Thanks, thank you. Okay, does there anyone else like to speak on this item? If not, then I'll bring it back to the commission and close our public hearing portion.
Well, these are always so difficult. I mean, and we're going through redoing our zoning ordinance, and we haven't seen the new telecommunications ordinance. And there's a part of me that almost hopes that we sort of change the process we use where they come for the use permit, because it leads the public to have this expectation that we have a whole lot more authority to do anything about this than we have. We do take an oath that we will abide by the laws that are in effect, and I think it puts all of us in a pretty difficult situation. I couldn't remember in our conditions whether or not we had any requirements for after the installation goes in, that there's any kind of testing to verify that the amount of radiation which they say is going to be emitted in various locations is accurate. For example, the gentleman talked about, the people who are going to be working under this. Is there some requirement? You have to ask the chair, not me. There is some requirement that, you know, certain levels are met, and if they're not met within, you know, what they're saying they will be.
Yeah,
Linda's.
Condition 5 says that the wireless communication facility shall comply with all federal communication rules, regulations, and standards. Every 2 years, the wireless telecommunication service provider shall submit to the Director of Community Development certification by a licensed engineer that the emissions are within the current standards. And number 2, a report on the level of cumulative radio frequency emissions within an 800-foot radius from the antenna.
Right, I guess my
That's like a big
question
one.
was, can that be done after it's installed? So we could, but not 2 years, not every 2 years. I mean, I wanna have the test done, you know,
Like
after
the
it's
first one
installed and
immediately.
gets ready to, so we set sort of a framework, and then they would have them every 2 years after that.
Do you want to leave that up to
I
Jason?
mean, I think from a planning perspective, we could certainly condition that. I would just ask if that's something that's agreeable or feasible to the applicant.
Jason, you want to?
Jason Osborne again. To address that, yeah, we're happy to do what we call a post-construction EMF study. We do them often and other applications, and then that would essentially reset the 2-year clock, if that's amenable to staff, and we can add that as a part of the condition.
And that would include sort of the office space below where it's installed.
Yes, and I will clarify it. The antennas, how do I say this? We have no intention of covering inside the building. It provides us, I mean, in other words, the antennas are facing out. So I've got a flashlight. If I'm below here, the antennas would have to be facing down,
Right.
and they're not. I mean, they're facing out. So they're literally the worst coverage on this building, if you will, from our perspective, is inside the building.
So it sounds like that would be something that'd be fairly simple for you
I mean, yeah,
to
we'd go down to the
validate.
top floor. Was there 3 floors? 2 floors. So I'm
So
thinking
we could add a condition in this that says post-installation, there'll be a report that you could
right.
submit.
And part of the EMF study that was provided to staff already included an EMF study. You know, so if this is the antenna, and it's already taken from here, which is less than 6 feet from the antenna, and that's already less than 5% of the FCC allowable limitation. So it's already 5%, and that's 4 feet from the antenna there versus even down. So we're happy to add that as a condition as well. That's no issue, a post-construction study.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more?
And so, you know, I'll just finish by saying, you know, certainly whatever the planning commission does can be appealed to the city council. That's happened before. And I hope that people who are really concerned about these issues, you know, contact their representatives, because it's really all coming about because everyone you know has a cell phone, and they're using a cell phone, and they're walking around with that cell phone. Yeah. And, you know, those have an impact on all of us. So, you know, contact people at the federal and state level who can do a whole lot more about this than we can do about it.
Nothing further to say.
I'll jump in and ditto, and I also want everybody in the public to know that the reports that we get are lengthy and they're complicated, and I know I read them all with a fine-tooth comb, even though, you know, our hands are tied on a lot of things. But one of the things that we can do is make sure that the telecommunications companies that are coming in have policies and procedures in place to make sure that they adhere to the FCC, and as long as they do that, then we can't carry that banner forward on whether the FCC limits are good or not. But I think that the public can trust that the companies are giving us good information about what's going on, and we're actually doing due diligence, and I ask a lot of questions and got answers that give me confidence that the testing and things that go on afterwards are going to make sure that they're in compliance. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay, I would concur with Commissioner Westman that it seems burdensome sometimes to have to deal with an issue that we know that our residents have an issue about, yet our hands are tied, and, you know, there's this, I guess, a sense that maybe we can do something about that. But what's been encouraging is to see the educational process of the audience, if you will, because now they're realizing that contact property owners are starting to understand that our hands are tied in this process. And I would also just comment again that this is always appealable to our city council, who can make some different decisions should they choose to do that. So at this point, I guess it's time to ask for a motion.
I would make a motion that the permit be approved with an addition to condition 5, requiring that the first test and report be done immediately after installation.
Okay.
Yeah, with that, I'll second it.
So we have a first, second, and all those in favor?
Aye.
So we all
Aye.
agree. Thank you, and thank you for your input. Okay, so at this time, I want to do a straw poll. I guess we can bring back Commissioner Newman. I want to do a straw poll to see where we stand, because we have 2 more items. I don't know if we're going to have time, or it's 8:20 to move on back to our special meeting. So do we want to see about rearranging the order here? So the 2 people who can't, they have to recuse themselves on Capitola, want to leave?
If you're not going to have the special meeting afterwards, then I'd appreciate you rearranging.
Well,
it,
it's
so-
8:20. I don't know how far we're going to get.
I think we've really tested the 9 o'clock limit for this commission, and I would say that we shouldn't go back again and try and stay later than that tonight.
Okay, so with that, I would recommend maybe we switch the Wharf Road item 4D to make it 4C, and move Capitola Ave down so you can recuse yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that work out?
No, I'm gonna hear Wharf Road.
Okay, so staff, I guess we're ready for 2205 Wharf Road. And so those of you who are here for this item, we're going to move it up, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you. Before you tonight is an application at 2205 Wharf Road. You can see it highlighted in turquoise. It's surrounded by a mobile home park behind it. There's single-family residential on either side. There's a PUD on one side, and then single-family homes to the north. And then across the street is more apartments, as well as the Soquel River. So what you're reviewing tonight is a design permit for a single-family home and a minor lot division of an existing lot, in which there's a triplex on the rear lot and then the new single-family home on the front lot. In going through the subdivision requirements, this is a very large lot, and it meets the density requirements of the zone in that for a triplex, you need 4,400 square feet per unit, and the rear lot, parcel A, must have a minimum of 13,200 square feet, and it's over that by over 1,000 square feet. Parcel B for the single-family home has a minimum square footage requirement of 5,000 square feet, and it also exceeds the minimum at 5,233 square feet. There is one requirement within the code that both lots comply with the 50 feet minimum for width, but the new lot in the front is 96 feet deep. So the applicant is asking for an exception to the standard to 94 feet. This is the proposed subdivision. So here's the new single-family lot that will be carved out. You can see on the existing home in the rear, the triplex, there's an existing deck that, in order to comply with the setbacks, 2 feet of that deck will have to be removed, and there's a condition of approval to remove the 2 feet of the deck. This is showing the exception. The depth of the lot is 94 feet, so they're asking for an exception to 100 feet. Within the code, it doesn't require a variance. It's just a exception within the subdivision requirements. Also, one other thing that isn't quite in compliance is that lots are typically at right angles from the road. This is a unique case in that access is very tricky off of Wharf Road. There's quite a steep slope that you go up from the driveway, and creating 2 access points would be difficult and more dangerous. So when this went to the Arc and Site review, there was support for a shared access, and therefore the lots are accessed off of the shared driveway and not at right angles to the street. But it is unique the way the slope is of this lot. Now we'll get into the proposal itself. So within that single-family lot, there are 6 substantial trees, 2 of which are proposed to be removed. One's a fruit tree, the other is a cedar tree, as shown in this image. The applicant has submitted a landscape plan in which, in order to mitigate the removal of the cedar tree, they're willing to plant 4 crepe myrtle trees along that entrance. So it'll create more privacy for them. As you can see, the design of the home, where the porch is central to the home, there's actually a very significant tree between the 2 properties, and the home has been designed to keep that other tree that kind of acts as a buffer between the existing triplex and the new single-family home. So they are doing a nice job of keeping several of the significant trees on site and are asking for the removal of 1 cedar. Next, I'll go through the development standards. In terms of floor area ratio, this project is in compliance with the 49% floor area ratio. The height for the regulation is 25 feet on the site, and the project complies with our height regulations. And all in all, for all the development regulations in the R1, this application is in compliance. Next, I'll go through the design. It's a single-family home. They're proposing a stained wood shingle throughout, and then also a nice 4-inch trim around, oh, that's for the next.
Is this
The next project, yeah.
Okay.
There's a nice 4-inch trim around the windows and doors, and then a 10-inch white belly band that goes throughout the building to show differentiation between the first and second stories. And these are the other elevations. So to the right, you can see the north is the rear elevation, and then both side elevations. So with that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve the design permit and the minor land division for 2205 Wharf Road as conditioned and in line with the findings for approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. So any questions of staff real quick?
I think you already went over this, but what's the minimum lot size for the triplex?
It's 4,400 square feet. Well, the minimum lot size is 5,000. But because it's a triplex, it's 4,400 square feet per unit. And I'm not able to do the math in my head right this minute. So the minimum at 4,400 is 13,200.
So my next question, follow up that is, it looks like the access serves both the new single-family lot and the triplex, so does that get subtracted? Because it's a shared easement?
It did not get subtracted.
Does our ordinance allow,
It doesn't, and it's one thing that I noticed when I came here, because my past practice has always been, when you subdivide, you look at net acreage versus gross acreage, but our ordinance does not differentiate.
Any other questions of staff? Okay, is the applicant here would like to speak? You? Okay, does anyone have questions of the applicant? No? Okay, well then, I'll open up to public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this project? Go ahead, sir.
Andrew West, me and my wife Rachel live at Woolsey Circle. The application says that .7 that all utilities are going to be taken care of. We have a private street and a plan that shows connecting to our private sewer. We've all the neighbors have been unified that we're not allowing 2205 to connect to our sewer or utilities. So we don't see how it meets, the application, as we're unified in that.
Okay.
We hate to lose that big tree, but he's a property owner, and that's his right to cut down trees if he wants to. But that's all we have.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Pat Trimble, Secretary, Loma Vista Estates Owners Association, the resident-owned mobile home park on Clare Street. The last time I stood here, we talked about a new Toyota dealership. That was a good project. That went well. Tonight, I'll ask you to direct staff to work with the applicant and the neighbors to find solutions to the many issues with the 2205 Wharf Road property. A little history. Mr. and Mrs. Wenzel, the original developer and owner-operator of Loma Vista Estates, lived at 2205 Wharf Road, and the park office was above the garage. Later in the years, to help a friend, an elderly widow, the Wenzels converted the office space to a small apartment. The 3-bedroom portion of the building was rented to families, moms, dads, and kids, single families. In 2014, the property was listed for sale as a single duplex. In December of that year, it sold as a single duplex. The current county tax rolls show the property being taxed as a single duplex. There are 2 mailboxes for 2205 Wharf Road, one marked 2205 and one marked 2205 Unit 2. The Postal Service thinks it's a duplex. Today, I asked city staff if there was a permit issued for a change from duplex to triplex. I haven't heard back yet. 2205 Wharf Road is a very difficult property to develop any further than it has already been developed. The terrain is severe and reduces usable space. There are several significant easements and absolutely no street parking on Wharf Road. These deficiencies result in a property that may have reached its population density limit. The easements. PG&E's gas pipeline easement. Emergency access to the main gas pipeline for Santa Cruz County is very important. Storm drain easement. The storm drain is used by 2205 Wharf Road and Loma Vista Estates. Both properties drain to that grate. Loma Vista Estates has its own emergency access easement through the 2205 Wharf Road property. Mike DeMars, our fire marshal, says it cannot be blocked. It's for emergency vehicles to access Loma Vista homes and Loma Vista residents to reach safety via Wharf Road. The proposed planter, as shown on the site plan, would block 4 feet of the emergency gate opening. That's not acceptable. Commissioners, doubling the number of households at 2205 Wharf Road strains and exhausts every resource, increases risk, and creates issues that will be difficult to manage. Please do not approve this plan tonight. Rather, direct staff to work with the applicant and the neighbors to find solutions to many issues. As we found with the new Toyota dealership, we can find a way. Thank you, Commissioners. Good evening.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Peter Taylor, and I'm the neighbor at 2225 Wharf Road. What your documentation doesn't show and implies is that 2 houses are going to share that driveway. The lot that exists and the new lot that's being proposed. That's not true. That driveway goes right through my property. I have to share that driveway with the next door neighbors. It is a 1-lane road. If you go and look at the number of places that you're talking about putting here, the number of cars, there's 17 parking spots on the plans that was submitted today that I saw with your documents. Getting 17 cars through there just blows my mind. How you think that's going to work, I don't know. We've already had one of our pets run over on that road. Coming here tonight, we nearly ran into the people who are living there. It is a very, very dangerous setup. I think you really need to go and look at it. You used to have a gentleman working in your department, Fred Braun. For about 5 years, I was a pain in his ass. I was down, anytime I would go through City Hall, I would try and go and see Fred Braun and ask him about Wharf Road. What were you doing to make it safer? I've had the most traumatic experience of my life trying to turn into my driveway, having somebody come, because I was coming from work from the direction of the Shadowbrook restaurant, turning left into my driveway. Quite legal. got my blinkers on all the way down there so people understand what I'm trying to do. A kid paying no attention to what's going on, driving at 35 miles an hour on that road, comes around the corner, eyes this big, I could see him in my mirror. Holy shit, what's he gonna do? Onto the sidewalk. Check the sidewalk. It's not square. It's rounded off. People, you routinely drive up on the sidewalk there. There was a woman coming the other way with a baby. It took my breath away. When I got out of my car, I nearly threw up. I could barely stand up. I was so traumatized because in a flash of a second, I saw that woman and that baby getting hit by that car and blown to kingdom come. It is an extremely dangerous intersection coming around that corner trying to get access onto Wharf Road. And triplex, when I read all this language of triplex in this report, I was baffled. I've lived there for 29 years. A family lived downstairs, and the lady was a refugee from East Germany that they converted a room upstairs in that office for her. And that's what's lived there until this gentleman bought the property. 3 cars, maybe 4 cars we would see it ever. 17. I mean, believe me, one day, if you let this through, you are going to read an article in the paper, either somebody in a car or on the sidewalk bought the farm because of this decision. This is bad news. I don't see, do I have to give them an easement to come across my property to get in here if you make another lot? I've got to go pull my property report and see exactly what type of an easement exists here. It was never mentioned here that, you know, this is my driveway these people are going to access that property through. There's no stop sign, yield signs. I mean, I won't bore you the number of times we've nearly had accidents there. Not to mention, your fire department. Are they going to drive up that driveway? I don't think so. We had an event at our house about, I think it was 2 years ago, 2:30 in the morning. My wife wakes me up, there's somebody in our house. We live in Capitola, we didn't lock the house. Come to find out, yeah, there is somebody in the house. Get hold of this kid. What the hell are you doing in my house? Why are you here? What's your address? What's your address? He's got a cell phone to his head. So instead of pushing him, I said, fine. I gave him the address, let him get on with it. And when he got off the phone, I said, who the hell were you on the phone with? 911. 911, what the hell are you phoning 911 for? In my house. Oh, Sierra's hurt. And he's looking at me like I knew who Sierra was. I'm like, who the hell's Sierra? And that's when he realized I hadn't a clue who this girl was. And then he really got big-eyed. Like, oh my God, I'm trespassing. I come to find out he met this girl at a party, walking her home. She walks him through our house. She walks and climbs over my second-story deck, lands on the ground. They have to call the fire department. Everybody comes 2:30 in the morning. Think the fire engine came up the driveway? Not a chance. I don't think those guys want anything to do with that driveway. The only people who came up the driveway were the EMTs, and they didn't even come up to my house. They just parked at the bottom of the driveway, and everybody hoofed it. So if anything happens at these 2 developments you're talking about, I really question if the fire department makes it up that road. And I think most of the emergencies they deal with, they're going to hoof it from Wharf Road.
Okay,
I think you really need to check it out.
thank you.
Hi, I'm Melody Taylor, and I am married to Peter. We live next door. I think one of the topics you hit right on the head in that when we purchased this property 29 years ago, we wanted to live in a single residence neighborhood. Yes, there was a home on the other side of us that rented a room to an elderly lady, but we considered it a single family residence. Now, there's a triplex there with 4 cars coming in and out just for the triplex. And then he's going to put another residence on the property with a garage. Yeah, he may live in that for a few years, but what's to stop him from selling that in a few years to a family of 6? So now all of a sudden you're going to have 8 cars coming in and out of that. Not only that, at the bottom of the driveway is where everybody lines up the garbage cans. Well, right now, they have 4, we have 3, that's 7. That's even before this new property goes in. So now you're gonna have 9 garbage cans at the bottom of this driveway that's only wide enough for a single car. How are cars gonna get in and out of there with 11 garbage cans sitting down there? This is not safe. The traffic on Wharf Road has grown at least 5-fold from the time we've moved in there. It's very dangerous. How are pedestrians gonna walk in and out of there? There's no sidewalks. There's no crosswalk. It's very dangerous. You have children and families walking across the street on the footpath. Again, we have seen cars go up over that curb and almost hit pedestrians. So I really think you should think about this driveway. It is dangerous. It's bad enough for 4 or 5 cars, but if you're going to get 8 cars in there, there could be a problem. So please think about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Rachel West. I also live on Woolsey Circle. I realize we're coming up on the 9 o'clock hour, so I just want to make a couple of brief points. Most seriously, the safety concerns that have already been mentioned. My window looks out on Wharf Road in my kitchen, and I see illegal U-turns. I've seen accidents. We've seen a woman in a stroller nearly get hit. We have emailed and requested additional things to slow traffic down on Wharf Road. It's very serious. So that's number one, the most serious thing by adding another property on that limited driveway. As a resident of Woolsey Circle, I wanted to, again, just draw your attention to the fact that we have a private road agreement and that we have unanimously as neighbors denied the request that Mr. Wright sent to us requesting an easement to come onto the property. I have a copy of his letter and all of the responses of the neighbors as well. I wanted to enter that into the record.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else here that'd like to speak on this item tonight? If not, I'll give the applicant a chance if you want to respond before I close public session and bring it back to the Planning Commission.
I'm not sure I can address all the points. We have tried to comply. In fact, as my understanding is we have complied with all the requirements for the permits for the triplex, which has been granted. And we have complied with fire department for access. And we are not asking for 17 parking spaces. We're asking for 6 for the triplex, 3 covered, 3 open. And we were asking for 2-car garage for the new lot. As far as Woolsey Court, as far as Wharf Drive, I cannot speak to the safety of the street. There is we do share a portion of the driveway off the street with our neighbor. That's been done for 50 years since the property was built. As far as the utilities, we have identified other access for all the utilities. And I'm working with the utility providers now. Unless there were any other questions, did I miss any of the issues that were brought up?
I don't think you did, I think you covered the big ones, but I think
Seems
that's.
like there were others, several others, actually.
I can clarify a couple things too.
Okay.
So in
Thank
terms
you.
of the triplex, there was an existing duplex on the site. It's in the multifamily zone and it's an allowed use, multifamily, as long as they have the minimum square footage. Because they're not doing a significant addition onto the existing structure, it just goes through a building permit process for review. It is a allowed use within the multifamily, to have a multifamily home. So we did receive a building permit for the conversion to triplex. I'm not sure at this stage if it has been, planning review has happened on the triplex, but I think they've got to go through SoCal. They've got to go through the water district and get their water rights. All utilities have to be checked. So it goes out, and the fire department has reviewed the plans in terms of that is a fire access for the mobile home. So there's, in terms of the triplex, that's in the process, but it goes through a building plan review, not a planning commission review, because it's an allowed use. And then, because there is an access, a shared access at the beginning of the driveway, that is a private matter between the two entities that they need to work out if they don't agree with access. But this has been the existing access onto this lot, so in terms of the city being involved, if they can't reach agreement, then they would have to come back with a different design if there is an existing issue between the two property owners.
Okay, any other questions of staff or?
So in regards to the emergency exit for the mobile home park, did staff take a look at that planter, and you deem that it is not blocking that emergency exit by 4 feet, or?
So with the planter, when the home plans come in for development, they'll go out to Central Fire to be approved as well, so then they'll have to sign off on these plans, but I can bring that up as a
Concern?
concern and let Brian Benson know, but.
And are there any standards for, width of roads for that many vehicles, and these meet those standards?
There are standards that are tied to the width of the road, and during Arkin site, typically any concerns would be raised if there were issues, and then also during the building submittal, when it's reviewed by the fire department, they would also bring forward. But my understanding is the width is there in terms of the fire access, and then it's whether or not it's all completely paved. I think they've got to keep a certain amount of clearance. So the pavement might be a little more narrow than the amount of required clearance. So you could have 12 feet of pavement, but the clearance it's required to keep clear at a certain width. And I'm sorry, I don't work for the fire department. I wish I knew the exactly how to.
But they'll deal with that as an
But-
issue,
But as it goes through, they'll
Talking
look
about
at.
just for
Yeah.
fire,
Right.
just for everyday ingress and egress on the property as well.
So we do have standards for road width, surface, grade, clearance standards. And then above that, you have fire access requirements, which are typically more restrictive. And we look at that. This project complies. We also shared it with the fire department, and they didn't have any issues with it.
I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
So this one got added on to the agenda?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can explain that. I was on vacation last week, and so I didn't put the packet together, and it was just
Okay, so you're fired.
I know.
So it was noticed.
But it was
Yeah, it
noticed.
It just didn't go out in the
Oh,
packet.
no, I know, but where I'm going with this is, I didn't get any 24 by 36 plans.
I didn't get any plans either.
I'm really having a hard time, I can hardly see this.
I didn't even get that.
And I'm having a hard time putting all this together, quite honestly.
I agree.
And I really would like to have a plan I can see and understand,
apologize.
and especially with the issues that are being raised.
Right, it seems like we got a request from the, Loma Vista homeowners group and stuff to have a little bit of time to, not saying they're completely opposed to the project, but to work with the applicant and try and resolve some of the issues. It seems like we're struggling up here, and that it would make a whole lot more sense to come back to our meeting on September 1st and hopefully have regular plans for us to look at, some of these questions answered. Maybe, the Public Works Director can help us as far as widths and roadways. Seems like they could take their plan to the fire department. The fire department could give it a thumbs up, thumbs down, and we wouldn't be wrestling with all of these issues. I mean, right now, I don't feel like I know enough or I'm comfortable enough that I could vote on it tonight.
I agree.
So it kind of sounds like a consensus. Is this something we can
Continue to.
continue till the September meeting? And yes, sir, do you have a question?
Just one quick comment, if I might.
Yeah, you need to come to the podium if you can.
So just to clarify, the fire department was contacted, and we did meet with them, and they did approve the fire access road. They asked for signage to clarify that it is an emergency lane, and they did approve the width and the signage, which has been put up.
Oh,
And that
thank-
way staff could have something to verify that when we talk about it at our meeting in September.
That can be provided,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
And smaller details such as the garbage can issue and those, what kind of, I think you can go over the tapes and see all the different, just to address everyone's individual comments. There were a lot of them tonight, and I didn't write them all down, so.
Yeah, and I share the concern about the access. I actually missed the driveway twice, and I had cars behind me. I didn't feel like slowing down. It's a tough place. I do, and Google Earth is great because I can pull it up on a map and take a nice, good look at it, almost better than I could by walking around your property. But I think we need a motion. We'll make a motion to continue this.
I've been making too many motions
I'm
tonight.
looking that way. I'll look to the right, I'll look to the
move we
left. and center.
continue this to our next meeting.
Okay, so I have a motion to continue the next meeting. I'll keep looking, I'll look this way.
I'll second it, okay?
So we have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and thank you for coming to this, and sir, we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will take us to what was originally item C, and because of location, we have two individuals that need to recuse themselves of this. And do we need to state, well, I guess we just need to state because they live within proximity, is that
Live
correct?
within
Nicole?
500
Yeah.
feet of the property.
I don't live in my office, actually.
But you own property.
Seems like it sometimes.
Because they own property.
We thought that you did live there.
And if you don't mind, I think we're gonna take like a 2-minute recess. I've been sitting here a long time tonight, so I will take 2 minutes. Sorry, and I appreciate you guys waiting till the end.
Because they're not going to do anymore.
Yeah. Because this is, I was gonna be really good this time and go, nope, it's in my yellow zone, and she even looked at it and said, yep, it's in yellow zone, but it's not.
Correct.
Yeah, so good correction, good
Is there
catch, but can you like put the,
Reason why you went away from doing it this way? It's so much clearer having it, this is the old one.
I think some of the old ones were created by the county, and we now have a different access.
Right, but I'm just saying, this
Yeah, we could
look is a
make that.
lot easier to read than the new satellite maps. I mean, you can read the new ones, but boy, it takes a while. You can get right in on
Do you
this.
have your phone, can you take a picture of it on your phone?
Susan will know about it, I guess. Isn't that great? Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for letting us take a quick recess, and we'll reconvene here, and we're going to look at item 419 Capitol Avenue. And
Excuse me.
is Katie or Ryan doing this?
It's Katie.
Katie's doing this report, doing the staff report.
Okay. The current application before you this evening is for a complete redevelopment at 419 Capitola Avenue. 419 Capitola Avenue is located in the Neighborhood Commercial Zoning District, adjacent to the single-family R1 zone along Riverview, and across from City Hall in the Public Facilities Zone. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing duplex and rebuild a new structure in its place that utilizes the existing footprint and the existing land use as a duplex. You'll recall that on March 17th, the applicant came before the Planning Commission with a conceptual review for future development of the site. The applicant provided the Planning Commission with 4 different development scenarios, of which 2 concepts were supported by the Planning Commission. During the conceptual review, the concepts were presented in 3D boxes suggesting possibilities for massing. The current application is based on option 2 and includes the architectural details of the building and further breaks down the massing of the building as required within our application process, but also stressed by the Planning Commission during the conceptual review.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt
So-
for a moment?
Sure.
I had to recuse myself the first time. I thought this was a different property, but, because I didn't even look at the other one knowing I had to recuse myself, and now, for this one, I don't. This is something that's already been heard, and options were, is that what you're saying? Options
It
were,
was a conceptual
It was a
review with
conceptual
4
review.
options.
yeah.
It was,
And then you folks gave them some guidance about which way to go. I'm not privy to that because I had to recuse myself that time. So
Are you in the radius?
I'm not, but both staff and I got a notice on it last time, and staff, and I agreed that I was within the radius. But I know I'm not, based on my map, although was there a different number on this last time? Different,
there was,
Was it
we
on?
reviewed one on Riverview that evening that was a modification
I'm really
to
confused.
429 Riverview, but then we also did the conceptual review. of
Yeah,
the-
I think,
You drew straws
You-
last time.
and
said
Susan-
Not enough, and,
Susan
was a
Westman-
lucky winner last
right.
time.
That's what happened.
Oh,
We-
and it might have, it was probably because it was conceptual review, we weren't making it.
I don't know.
No,
But all I'm
last time
saying
we
is
drew
I am
straws,
not
and
privy-
Susan was the one that was at the, when we, at the staff report, at the report.
I was in Riverview.
Do you remember what the
Or
date
Riverside.
was for that?
It's March 17th.
So I feel ill-equipped to hear this, knowing that there were recommendations made, because I didn't listen to that dialogue. And I'm sorry if that was in the, it was in the background report, and I just failed to to see that. I was thinking this must have been the property next door. There were several. I'm sorry. And I don't
Well,
quite know what to
From a,
do about it.
yeah, from a legal standpoint, does it, so they came from conceptual review, that wasn't anything we took action on. This is something that is submitted, so is this
I
something?
don't
that-
think there's any legal issues. I think it comes down to the comfort level of the commissioners to make an educated decision tonight. If you
Right.
feel that you can do that, I would suggest proceeding. If you don't, I think the logical course would be to continue.
Well, the only thing that I think is that, I may have a differing opinion than their first options that they recommended, which has led the applicant, astray on such a small body here with 3 people. And so that's the only thing I'm concerned about.
Yeah, so if it's a comfort level, but what I would, we have the comments from what the commissioners had stated, and not everyone has to go through that conceptual, so it'd be almost like a new
Yeah. All
set
right,
of
I'm
plan,
all right
but
if
I don't
everybody-
want to
just
push you
wanted
if you're not
I wanted
comfortable.
to disclose that, and not sure exactly what happened.
It's showing you maybe 2 properties outside of,
Or one of them. Well, at any rate, I just wanted to,
It was Susan that was here last time, because she had a couple comments, which I was going to address, but
right.
And this is something that we've discussed internally, of making sure that we're very clear who is within and outside of these, and to bring it to your attention and us to take the lead on that for you. So we hope to not have any misguidance on that in the future, so.
You know, and Gail, it's completely, if you're comfortable dealing with it tonight. I was here for the conceptual part, but I did not think I was going to be able to hear it tonight. So I'm gonna do a little bit of catch-up here. If it would be better to continue it to the next meeting and discuss it then, if you would feel better about that,
I
I
think
would
we also
support
should
Mondo.
ask the applicant. I mean, I think this is, this needs to be a process that's above, above board, so that everyone feels comfortable. And if I were the applicant, I don't know if I would want a brand-new commissioner coming in who hadn't given their opinion on this issue. And haven't we in the past, when it's the same thing, we continue the commissioner who was the sitting commissioner to begin with?
We tried to do that on at least one time.
I think that would be the case if it was an item that was continued.
Continued, right.
But in this
I
case, it was just a conceptual review.
conceptual.
There was no decisions. It's informal guidance.
But we've led these
but
people to
sure.
think one thing, and I might have a completely different opinion.
I think your suggestion's a good one. Maybe hear what the applicant has to say and help
Yeah,
your
so-
decision-making.
And if I may weigh
Do you
weigh
even
in, we
understand what
did
we're saying?
notice it, and we have members of the public here, so
Yeah.
there's probably at least
Well,
a
it looks like we
portion
have
of the
one member.
process that we would
yeah.
want to go through before we would.
Looks like
Let's
we
see
have
what,
one member of
let's
the
see what the
public here.
applicant, what is your thoughts on this?
We have one member of the public. The other is my wife and my business partner and your wife.
Yeah.
We would like to continue. That would be our preference.
To wait until, or continue
no, I mean,
tonight?
we would
Okay.
like to continue tonight.
Okay.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Good. Okay, so I guess, Gail, are you
I'm fine,
comfortable?
I'm comfortable, as
Yeah,
long as
we
you're
believe in
comfortable, knowing I just closed that, I feel all right.
I think there's enough members here who can pass on the
Okay.
concerns of the
Good.
others, so, okay, well, thank you. Thanks for
Yeah,
trying to
sorry.
find that. It's all right.
Continue, Katie, excuse me.
Okay.
Okay, so, again, on March 17th, we had conceptual review. There were 4 options that were shown, and there were 2 that were supported by the Planning Commission. This is one of the 2, but at that time, there were just 3D boxes of renderings, and now they've added all the architectural details and further broken up the massing as required within a design permit. The application includes a design permit for a 3-story duplex and a variance to the front and side yard setbacks. The design brings the structure closer to the road and provides on-street parking, and adds a 3rd story, which is set back 7 feet from the front facade. First, I'll go over the request for a variance and an overview of the unique attributes of the site and within this block of Capitola Avenue. When reviewing a variance, the Planning Commission must make sure there are special circumstances tied to the actual property, and that granting of a variance is not a special privilege, cannot be viewed as a special privilege. So some of the special attributes of this lot, the properties along this block are not at right angles to the street. So when you're placing a structure within the property, you can see that oftentimes the building, you can see the footprints here, they tend to go closer to one property line and not the other, because they're trying to be oriented towards the street, but due to the property lines being offset, it's difficult to achieve without getting closer to a side property line. Next, throughout this block, there are substandard lot depths, and I'll go into more detail, but on the left-hand side of the lot, the depth of the lot is 58 feet, and on the right hand, it's 48 feet. This is an aerial of Capitola Avenue, and the CN district is shown in red. So you can see the arrow that says 419, that's the area within the 400 block that has less, the lots are more substandard. Once you go beyond Blue Gum and a few homes up on Capitola Avenue, the lots are generally about 100 feet deep. And this is a close-up image of the 400 block of Capitola Avenue, and you can see the lots range. The ones in red outline are 31 to 40 feet in depth. The lots in green are actually similar to the normal CN lot of between 85 and 100 feet. And in yellow is 41 to 60 feet, and that's where 419 falls. The majority of the existing structures within this block do not comply with the 15-foot front yard setback requirement. So as you can see here, there's the footprints outlined, and Capitola Avenue is shown in a darker gray, and many of the structures are within the 15-foot required setback. Next, one feature is that this is within our gateway to the Capitola Village. So as people are driving into Capitola Village, this will be one of the primary structures that they see when entering the village. And then along this block, there's a mix of height. So within the CN zone, the height requirement is 27 feet. The existing structure is just about 18 feet tall. So when they add to this structure, they'll be adding about 9 feet to the height. And looking at this image, when you see the two buildings to the left, the white building on the far left is 25 feet in height, and the bronze tan building is 27 feet in height. So the new structure will be similar to that bronze building, the second one in. And then this is an aerial showing close up. I've got the building outlined in yellow, and just to show the lot coverage around this area. So it backs up to residential, and you can see many of the residential lots utilize the majority of their, the structures utilize the majority of the lot. This is a unique property in that there actually is a small rear yard, and the applicant is proposing to keep a rear yard. This is the view of Capitola Avenue. And this is the view of the existing building as viewed from Blue Gum, and also from one of the neighboring residential driveways. So you can see how it's viewed from the residential area. So within this image, this is something that we looked at the conceptual review. If you were to take the existing building as it is today and put a third-story addition, this is what it would look like in order to comply with the setback standards of the code. And due to the lot lines not being at right angles to the road, you can see how it's off-centered, the third story. So this is one of the challenges of the site. And this also shows what would comply with the code today. So in blue, that little area of blue, that is the area that would comply with the setback requirement of 15 feet on the front, a little over 10 feet in the rear, and then the side yard setbacks. What the applicant is proposing, this is what came in as a concept when it was just shown as massing, is to bring the first 2 stories closer to the road, and then adding a third story above. And parking will remain on-site. Some of the options showed parking off-site and not quite being met on-site, so within this application, the parking is met on-site. So for a variance, the applicant must show that there are special circumstances associated with the property, and that this is not a grant of special privileges. Here you can see the the outline of the building footprint. The front yard, they're asking for a variance that would go down to 2 feet from the property line, and you can see the sidewalk is just outside of their property line. And on the side yard, by extending that building forward, they're within 1 foot of the side yard property line. The new 3-story building incorporates contemporary design features. There's a materials board that you can pass around, so you can see what this looks like. The 3 stories are differentiated through materials with stucco on the first story and aged ash horizontal siding on the second and third stories. A slightly recessed and angled bronze ionized water jet cut panel extends above the entryway to the midpoint of the third story. The 3-foot wide panel will add a unique architectural detail that breaks the massing across the front elevation with the slight recess and creates a defined look. Additional aluminum paneling will be incorporated onto the side elevations towards the front of the building, again adding to the architectural features as viewed along Capitola Avenue. The building is further articulated with the 3rd-story wall stepped back 7 feet, with the incorporation of a deck for each of the units. All windows and doors are bronze anodized aluminum, including the garage door. Stained western cedar will be incorporated into the front wall plane of the 3rd story, so quite modern materials and a defined look along our entryway. The rear of the building includes a 1.5-foot cantilever for the stairwell, creating differentiation in the wall plane and breaking up the massing. When this went to our Arc and Site Committee, we asked that they submit a streetscape so that that could be looked at in this review. And we also asked for a shadow study, so I'll show those to you now. This is the streetscape view. So as I mentioned earlier, on the bottom is a photo collage of existing conditions, and I noted the height of those 2 buildings, the 25 and 27 feet. Here's the new building, the outline at 27 feet, so again, similar to that tan building to the left, which their office is in currently. So that's the streetscape. Next, in looking at the shade shadow study, I asked for an updated study to show what's the existing conditions is. At first they submitted the proposed, and that's what is in your packet. This came in yesterday, so I wanted to put it on a slide for you. So you can see existing at the top and then proposed down below. So on a summer day at noon, you can see the shadowing isn't bad at all. But then in a winter solstice, you can see how much further the shadowing extends. So this is the shadow and the winter solstice of the existing building, and then you can see it actually extends to the neighboring property line in the winter. So staff is recommending that Planning Commission approve the application for 419 Capitola Avenue for a design permit and variance, and we thought there were strong findings for a variance for this application due to the circumstances that exist throughout the block. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Any questions for staff? Did you look through that? Okay, would the applicant like to make any comments this time? No, you're good? Okay, and we have one person in the audience who commented last time. Mr. Graves, would you like to?
Yes, absolutely. You know, my name is Ron Graves. I live at 420 Riverview Avenue. You're approving 419 Capitola Avenue so you can understand the proximity to my house. I would just like to make a few comments. Last time, when there was a different 3-member panel here, there were some suggestions that were sent out to the applicant, and I'm happy to say that he really adhered to some of them. I would say that the project, from the conceptual stage to what it is today, is much improved. The idea of pulling the whole structure closer to the sidewalk really works for everybody, including him. I've been assured, but it was not mentioned in the staff report, that the west side of the building, or the side towards Riverview and Blue Gum, would only have windows that were from bathrooms and possibly some window light for a rear inside staircase. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. The idea also that was brought forward last time that they were going to do away with parking. I'm happy to see that there's 4 parking spaces. They have 2 now, plus the pad in front that only can take a horizontal car. In other words, same way as the street's running. The only bad feature of this whole project right now, in my estimation, is that it is a box, but what can you do with these tiny lots? And the one suggestion that was not adhered to was the idea of giving it some kind of a roof that is pitched. This is strictly a flat top roof. I am very happy to see that they removed the rear deck, put it on the front. I have nothing really bad to say. This is a complimentary time for me. I think you should approve it. I would like to say that I'm happy that the applicant took your suggestions to heart, and I wish him well on his project. Thank you.
Thanks.
And can I ask, while I'm up here, for a moment before you adjourn the meeting tonight to discuss an issue? Do you have an oral communications at the end of your agenda like you used to?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so you have that. We have everything in front of you. I'll close the public comment period and bring it back to the commission.
Can you put the front back up? It is a box. It's a nice box, though. My biggest concern is that there's absolutely no landscaping or anything in the front to soften it at all. And I'm just wondering if that's just because of the proximity to the sidewalk or if that's a style choice. If I could ask the applicant that question.
Commissioners, thanks for staying a little later tonight. To answer your question about the landscaping and the conceptual review, we were advised to put as many plantings as we could on the property, which we fully intend to. We have some restrictions with drainage in the front of the property, so that does limit our areas for landscaping, but our intent is to landscape everything that we can. We think it enhances the building. Anything else?
Any other questions for the applicant? No, thank you. Anything else from?
So I'm gonna jump in there because I've said this before. Capitola is a very eclectic place, and it's got a lot of styles and a lot of different types of structures. I know one of the things that we've really talked about that we didn't want to have in Capitola Village were a lot of, flat top buildings. I would like to see this design have a little bit more curves, but I also understand that it's a style choice, and it's a beautiful building for the style that it is. And that, I would never not approve it because of my style choice, because I think that personal choice is a huge part of buying property, and that even goes in Capitola. I would like to see landscaping in the front. I'd like to see, some plant element that softens it. And going up and down that street, I know that's hard to do. I walked it and looked at it, but I would like to see some kind of planting put in. And I think I could leave that up to the community development director to add a condition that there's got to be landscaping in the front that gets added. I don't need to see the plant count or anything like that, but I really think that there needs to be some landscaping in front. And with that, I could approve the project.
Okay, did you?
Can I address that really quick? It's kind of hard to see, but we do have a planter up at the top at the deck level. The plant is shown there, but it's kind of gray and it's not super obvious. But that's our best attempt, given our
Sit right in
draining
the middle of it,
situation,
yeah.
to put plantings in the front of the building.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's all the planting in the front of the building that you plan to do? Is that one? I mean, it's the third floor, so it's not going to be real visible from the street.
Yeah, for us, that's a guarantee. We know we can get that done.
Yeah.
When it comes to the site development, we intend to put as much as we can onto the property, but that, for sure, we have complete control over that.
Okay.
We don't have complete control over the drainage issues, so
Okay.
we will do as much as we can.
Understand, thank you.
It's only 3 of us up here tonight, so.
We're dwindling. Well, I love your designs. I love to see your name up on new buildings because I always have to slow down and really take a look at them. I think you guys are, you just knock it out of the ballpark. And I don't mind new designs in Capitola. The only problem I have about this is that it feels like a lot of building. I don't mind the shape of the building. I don't mind how it looks. I just think 2,500 plus square feet for this particular lot is really asking for a lot. And I personally would like to see it scaled down so that you don't have 2,500 square feet on this lot. I know you're restricted in all kinds of ways by, is this in the floodplain and they have to put so parking and all of that. Let's see, I'm trying to see how much actual livable space do you have here? Ground
There's-
floor is like 1,800?
There's one bedroom on the 3rd floor, and otherwise it's a
Floor unconditional
kitchen, living room, dining room on the
So
main
you've got
floor.
like about 1,600 square feet of livable space on the second and third floor. 1,600 square feet. I'm just thinking, I would like to see it brought down a little bit, but I know I'm coming late to the game here. I feel that it's 2,500 square feet is a lot. When we approve this, we're going to be getting a lot. This is what this street's going to look like up and down this street over the years. We can guarantee that. Once we let somebody do this much, it's going to happen all up and down that street. And so my feeling is that we, ask for a compromise and we ask it to be scaled down a little bit so that it's not quite that much building. I don't mind the style, but the amount of building. And I'd also like to see some kind of landscaping against the building or whatever at street level. I think there needs to be something at street level. It could be against the building, ficus, some kind of a creeper or something that you could figure out to soften, get a little green on the street level. I think that's really important. Other than that, I think it's good. I like the materials. I'm really enjoying the house that's on Riverview Avenue that just got built. It's good. I'm liking it. So I just feel, what I hear over and over again is that people in Capitola are feeling like the world is coming in, it's just crashing in on them. We're getting it from here and there. It's traffic, it's people wanting to build more units, more this, more that, and that's the biggest thing I hear is that people want Capitola to, at least for us to try to keep it somewhat like it is today. We can't, but we can work with applicants for that. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, I'm encouraged by, yeah,
You're the chair.
What the heck, we're here, I
It's after
don't
9
know, that's
o'clock.
like.
In regards to the size, first off, as you can see kind of in the middle there, and you can see in the right-hand diagram how it angles down, we intentionally tried to split that up so the massing at the street wouldn't be so.
Right.
But at the same time, we understand that the city has really wanted to kind of bring the buildings forward to the street to kind of create that street presence along. So by decreasing the size of it is really, the only way you could really decrease it is to bring let's say, increase the backyard size, per se. And the intention of that,
Side yard setbacks?
it's so narrow, it's 2 units. It is a duplex. So it's a modification to an existing duplex.
Oh,
So
it's 2 units side by side?
yeah, that's what it is now. And so we're just, so it's going to remain a duplex. So there's vertical circulation between the two that separate them. So it's kind of narrow as it exists. And also the parking situation, we actually originally had it so that you couldn't fit all four parking spaces within the footprint. And we extended it just enough to meet that, so we can get the 4 covered parking spaces on site. So that's kind of what ultimately led to the actual size that it exists at
Right,
now.
and again, tandem parking places to me are like totally problematic, especially on a street like this where somebody has to slow down, somebody has to pull out in order for them to go in, get out. Yikes, it's.
Well, we do it every day at our office right here at 411, and I mean, it's generally the way we handle it it seems to be pretty safe the way we figured it out, but I understand. And
Well, you're coming out of a garage too, as
Yeah.
opposed to open spaces, but, you know, I respect your limitations.
Okay.
Are you open to reducing side yard or thinking about floor plans that are straight across
well,
instead of up and down, or?
Currently, trust me, we've explored multiple options. Like when we came to the conceptual review, we explored multiple options. I mean, commercial use at some point, but ultimately, we're as narrow as probably we can get for the 2 duplexes, considering we have to get, we have vertical circulation coming up to both the units, up the middle. Like currently, the way it exists now, it's very difficult. They actually have to go into the garages to come in and up. And so we tried to create a street presence by having a front door at the middle that they could share. They share that stairway up to the 2 units, and they split up at the top. At that point,
it's a great
yeah, it would make it difficult to shrink it in width, I would say, yeah. Thanks.
Well, I'm actually encouraged by it, and I share Commissioner Ortiz's concern about that streetscape, but I think at some point it is gonna be that height. But, you know, historically, there's some 27-foot long, tall buildings along that area, but I think you're right. I think it's gonna be pretty much filled in along that way. I think looking at this picture, the massing is really hard to tell, the visual part of it, because I think architecturally what you guys have done is gonna break it up so it doesn't look like the box we're looking at in this 2D version of it. So I think that the actual massing won't look quite as big as it once it's actually built. I'm encouraged that you, and just because Commissioner Westman is not here, and she was here that night, you know, the rear deck was her thing that she said she couldn't support, so I'm glad that you addressed that. And I think it's gonna be a nice addition. I think it's, to me, I think you've met everything you can meet and still try to have something that's gonna work for you on that property. So, personally, I don't really have a lot more to add to it. I think you've kind of done what you could do myself, but that, I guess we're at a point, unless there's more discussion, to look for a motion.
I could move approval with an added condition that the landscaping in the front, that there be landscaping in the front that meets with the community development director's approval before the final occupancy is granted.
On the ground floor?
On the ground floor, at street level, on the front side, on the ground floor. And like Gail said, creeper, you know, anything to put plant material on the front of it, just to give it a softened look there at the bottom, even if it's planters.
Whatever they do, it'll look beautiful, so.
We can certainly do that, but I just want to make sure we all have sort of the same expectations. When I look at this lot and imagining the building coming forward, the access requirements for the 2 parking spots, there's not going to be a lot of room. So
Right.
we'll get some landscaping, but in reality, it's probably not going to be a lot.
And anything too big may obstruct their view of getting in and out of the garage.
Well, I think,
Yeah, no.
again, when it's against the side of the building.
Right.
Yeah.
it won't do that.
And I trust that you guys can get together and do what you can do.
And I'm hearing it could be attached to the stucco wall.
Absolutely.
So, okay.
They may not want anything attached to their walls, so.
So we have a motion
Second.
and a second, and I guess
We get
we'll,
some flack
we'll,
for this, though, let me tell you.
we'll do a roll call. I guess I don't want to, I guess all those in favor, we could just say
Aye.
Aye.
aye. So all 3 of us are in favor, and congratulations, you guys are good. And with that, we can do, we don't really have oral communications on there. We'll do the director's report. Anything to add? And then we'll.
Just very briefly, I was going to remind the commission that the council is going to start their zoning code hearings next Thursday. We discussed that earlier. Also, we have had a number of questions from members of the public and the media about the Polar Express that's being proposed to go on the Capitola Railway during the holidays. There was an agenda item for the Regional Transportation Commission today. They continue that item, and we will discuss that a little bit next Thursday with the council as well. As of right now, there's no destination identified. We don't know
Capitola.
where this, I don't even know what to call them, a provider, I guess, the operator, plans to stop the train to look at a little Christmas village. So that's been the most common question we have, and we don't know. So.
I like the idea.
You know, it's interesting. I can imagine we'll have some residents who live along the rail line that won't be overly excited about hearing the horns come through
Jingle
during the
bells.
holidays. But
4 times a night.
it has potential, and we'll see what comes of it. But we have had some comments. I want to bring that up to you. That's all I have. And then just a reminder of the chair that since we're going to forego the special meeting, we'll still need to adjourn that before we conclude tonight as well.
Thank you for that reminder. Mr. Graves?
Yes, I won't take a lot of your time. During your break between your meeting and this last item, I had an opportunity to talk with Katie about the cinema up on 41st Avenue.
Right.
When I was on the commission with you, we approved the marquee sign, I'll call it that because that's what it was called that night. And also we approved the sign on Capitola Road, which is a freestanding sign. What has been built as of the last couple of days is nothing like what we approved. In front of the cinema, there now is a freestanding structure that's approximately 6 feet wide and goes up to the top of the building, and they've never finished where the marquee sign was going to go on the front of the building. And I worried, and I called the city here a month or so ago when they were finishing up the facade on the front, saying that I thought the marquee sign would blow away in a good wind if they were going to attach it to the front parapet wall there, and it concerned me. Believe me, this sign that they're putting up now is much larger than the marquee sign that was approved, and it isn't going to blow away in a 100-year storm. I mean, it's big and heavy. What concerns me really is that the whole thing has been delayed so long, and we're having this happen with a lot of projects in Capitola. I was happy to see that the city attorney was very happy to come to grips with Capitola Road, the construction that's gone on for 9 years on a single-family residence. But we have the same problems on Depot Hill when you go up on Sacramento Avenue, and I'm seeing that maybe that judicial work has bore some fruit up there. I see they got the grading going, so maybe we'll see those chain link fences in your neighborhood, Mr. Chairman, go down. But what all this brings to mind is enforcement. And it seems like the city is not enforcing its own rules. We approve things, and why have a body like yourself if they build something different and we don't do anything about it? I'd really like you to look into the cinema. I'm not against, I don't even know what the freestanding sign's gonna look like. I mean, it's not what was approved, nor is the sign that's finished on Capitola what was approved. It was to have more than just the pole holding the venue up on top of it. It was to have bulk at the street level. It was to have landscaping, kind of like the propane tank at the Shell station that never got built to what we approved, right, Linda? And I'm just concerned. Why have you guys if we don't enforce it? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And I haven't had a chance to go by and look at that marquee yet. I understand they're building it, but
So this is the first I've heard
Oh,
of it, that
yeah.
it's not the
It's-
same
it's
as what
different?
was approved, so I'll make sure to go out and take a look.
right.
Can you report back?
Yep,
To
I
us,
can
thanks.
report back.
Great, and then, so we need to, any commissioner communications?
I move we adjourn the
We're not
special
gonna,
meeting.
Continue it to
we're gonna
September
continue the
1st.
special meeting.
Continue the special meeting until September 1st.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue till September
Second.
1st and a second. All those in favor, aye.
I
And then a motion to adjourn?
adjourn this meeting to September 1st? The regular meeting is
Yes,
September
our regular meeting will be September 1st, yes. Second?
Second.
All those in favor, aye? Thank you. I totally lost control of this meeting tonight. This was like,
You did a great
this
job.
was a long night.
Great job.
You know what, we used to meet until 11 o'clock at night, regularly.